These companies support the Thom Hartmann Program. They are HelloFresh, the #1 meal kit delivery service. More info at HelloFresh.com, code TOM. The Hidden History of Big Brother in America, How the Death of Privacy and the Rise of Surveillance Threaten Us and Our Democracy by Thom Hartmann. More information at all book outlets. Wild Alaskan Company, 100% sustainable wild-caught seafood delivered right to your door. More info at wildalaskancompany.com/Tom. Cozy Earth, better sleep, better you. More info at cozyearth.com, promo code TOM. The latest views and opinions from U.S. politics and other fascinating subjects too, including cutting-edge science reports at hartmanreport.com. And Dinovite, a whole food supplement for your pet's immune system. More info at dinovite.com.
For Hire, how the CIA and U.S. Army recruit mercenaries for white Rhodesia. It's a historical reprint of what appears to be a 1979 pamphlet, basically. This is from the introduction. It does have an ISBN number. It is available in book sources. In Zimbabwe, Rhodesia, actually this must have been published post-1980 because they're referencing Zimbabwe. In Zimbabwe, Rhodesia, 270,000 white settlers, mostly immigrated since World War II, controlled the government and economy, ruling over the 7 million black Africans. The Zimbabweans cannot vote. They have been forced off the bulk of the arable land, and they have no democratic rights whatsoever. All labor performance in Zimbabwe is black labor, and it is intensely exploited, often at less than subsistence wages. Zimbabweans have been fighting European invaders since the early 17th century. Since the 1890s, they have been directly ruled by Europeans, at first in the form of a private British corporation, the British South Africa Company. Since 1923, direct political rule has been in the hands of the white settlers, currently led by Ian Smith and his fascist Rhodesian Front Party. It's important to note that the white settlers were originally given this direct local power as a, quote, self-governing colony of the British government, thereby creating a master-caretaker relationship. During these past 80-odd years, Western imperialism, the multinational corporations of the United States, Britain, and South Africa, has extracted huge profits from the exploited and oppressed Zimbabwean population via the subsidiaries of the Anglo-Americans, Lonrho, Amex, AMAX, Union Carbide, Mobil, ITT, and other corporations. They fully intend to continue doing so as long as they can. The white settler minority has been rewarded for their violent subjugation of the Zimbabwean people with perhaps the highest national standard of living in the world. Sir Roy Walensky, the former Prime Minister of the Central African Federation, which included what is now Rhodesia, once said, "This man Smith has an appeal. It's the appeal of an easy life. For $6,000 a year, you can have 5 servants, a swimming pool, and a lot." Beginning during the early 1960s, however, the Zimbabwean nationalist forces under the leadership of the Zimbabwe African National Union, ZANU, evolved the strategy of guerrilla war to liberate their people and land. It is proving to be very successful. There are 20,000 guerrillas in base camps in Tanzania and Mozambique, over 3,000 in Zimbabwe itself, and this number is continually rising. In a meeting between Stephen Solars, a U.S. congressman, and the ZANU guerrilla leaders, they were reported to reject the possibility of enlisting the assistance of Cuban or other foreign troops, declaring that if we cannot liberate ourselves, we do not deserve to be liberated. Despite Western propaganda to the effect that the U.S. and British only wish to avoid a bloodshed in Rhodesia, don't forget the Zimbabweans have been bleeding for almost a century, their real fear is that the liberation struggle will win. With this victory in sight, it is not surprising that the counterattack by the Smith regime has become more vicious and brutal. Actually, this must have been published pre-1980, because this is when Smith was still in power in Rhodesia. More than 250,000 rural Zimbabweans have been forced into concentration camps. Terrorist raids have been conducted against Zimbabwean refugees in Mozambique. Dusk to dawn shoot-on-sight curfews have been instituted and enforced in the border areas. And escalating counterinsurgency attacks have been launched against the military arm of the liberation struggle, the Zimbabwean People's Army, ZIPA. It is crucial for Westerners to understand that the Smith regime has not stood alone in this barbaric campaign. This pamphlet documents the critically important element in U.S. imperialism's support for the Smith regime, white mercenary reinforcements for the fascist Rhodesian, quote, security forces. This flow of U.S. mercenaries to prop up white Rhodesia is an important, though secret, part of U.S. imperialism's strategy for Africa. The U.S. has massive investments in southern Africa. Zimbabwe alone supplies the bulk of high-grade chrome ore used in the U.S. for jet engines and other advanced technological items. Coal, copper, and other minerals are ripped out of Zimbabwe for U.S. industry. Mobil Oil, Texaco, Hertz Rent-A-Cars, Holiday Inns, and many other U.S. corporations operate illegally in Rhodesia through foreign subsidiaries. More important still is South Africa, the fortress of U.S. interests in Africa, where $1.5 billion is invested by GM, IBM, Ford, and other giant multinational corporations. The liberation of Zimbabwe would, for the first time, penetrate the buffer zone of satellite countries protecting the borders of South Africa. South African guerrilla fighters, who are already training by the thousands in camps in Tanzania and Zambia, would have direct access to re-enter their land and accelerate the liberation struggle. Knowing that the stakes are high, U.S. imperialism has worked to strengthen the white supremacist outposts in Africa, although at times this had to be done covertly. In 1970, the Nixon White House approved Henry Kissinger's Operation Tar Baby strategy, based on Option 2 of the Secret National Security Study Memorandum No. 39. This strategy essentially called for covert military assistance, including direct exchanges, so that South African troops could be trained in the U.S. in specialized tactics and weapons. This would be done while the U.S. tried to convince Africans that it was on their side. This is from the pamphlet number 39, that Kissinger memorandum. We would maintain public opposition to racial oppression, but relax political isolation and economic restrictions without openly taking a position undermining the United Kingdom and the UN on Rhodesia. We would be more flexible in our attitudes toward the Smith regime. And it goes on from there. Guns for hire.
This is the Thom Hartmann Program.
Well, happy Thursday. We've got a lot to cover today. Donald Trump is being hit. Well, we're waiting for the judge to decide, but Letitia James, the Attorney General of New York, has asked a judge to hit Donald Trump with a $10,000 a day fine. I think he should pay a percentage of his income. We'll get into that in just a minute. Also, what's it going to take for Americans to see that Republicans are utterly cynical about voter fraud? We'll get into that in our first hour. And a crazy alert. A Trumpster praises Adolf Hitler for overcoming homelessness and getting in the history books. Yes, what a great achievement. In our second hour, J. David McSwane will be with us. He's got a new book, Pandemic, Inc., about chasing the capitalists and thieves who got rich while we got COVID. And also, will naked racism continue to work in the Republican Party? I'm predicting yes, but we'll talk about that. And in our third hour, Brendan Fischer is going to drop by. Should Democrats demand that Clarence Thomas be impeached and his wife, if not arrested, at least investigated? We'll get into that in our third hour. But I want to start with my daily take today over at HartmannReport.com. It's titled $10,000 a day fines mean nothing to Trump. He should pay a percentage of his income. And, you know, I start out with how Letitia James, the Attorney General for New York State, asked a state judge to fine Donald Trump $10,000 a day until he, complies with the subpoena. He as of March 3rd, which is what, a month and a week or so ago, a month and 11 days ago, he was supposed to turn over a bunch of documents to the New York State Attorney General's office and show up for some discussions, shall we say. And so she says, he's in contempt of court. He's, or she's asking the court to find him in contempt of court. Now, for Donald Trump, $10,000 a day, I mean, for you, for me, $10,000 a day is a lot. Right? For most Americans, I mean, more than half of Americans can't deal with a $400 unexpected expense. More than 60% of Americans can't deal with a $1,000 unexpected expense. $10,000 a day, it's a hell of a lot of money for the average American, and it would wipe out a low-income family. I mean, could throw them into bankruptcy, into homelessness. It would just wipe them out. But for Donald Trump, I mean, this is a guy who has billions and has access to billions more. His son-in-law just got $2 billion for what Trump did while he was in the White House, sucking up to Saudi Arabia. His Treasury Secretary got $1 billion. I mean, $10,000 a day, if you multiply that by 365 days in a year, you get $3.65 million a year. Well, Donald Trump has every reason to want to drag this investigation out as long as he can. I mean, they're looking into whether he committed bank fraud and tax fraud. You go to prison for both those things. Now, this is a civil inquiry so far that Letitia James is doing. In other words, it could cost him a lot of money. But even that, hey, for $3.5 million, he can keep the wolf away from the door? Sure, go for it. Andrea Junker noted over on Twitter, I've said it once and I'll say it 1,000 times. If the penalty for breaking a law is a fine, then the law only exists for the poor. And it's true. So, what do? I mean, we run this kind of flat rate fee system, fine system in America where, if you get a traffic ticket, it's $50 or $200 or whatever it is. You get that traffic ticket. If you are, if you can't afford to pay that, then tough luck. You go to jail. Or tough luck, the fine starts getting compounded and pretty soon you're broke and bankrupt. On the other hand, if you're morbidly rich, a $200 traffic ticket, you just have, one of your employees handle it. So what do other countries around the world do about this? This fact that, it's an old cliche that America has two justice systems, one for the rich and one for everybody else. But it's true. So what other countries have tried to do something about this? Sweden, Germany, Denmark, Austria, Switzerland, and France all have systems where when you pay a fine, it's based on how much you're worth or how much you earn. These are typically called day fines in Europe, and they're called day fines because they're based on how much money you have left over at the end of a day. So they take your daily income, subtract from it your basic living expenses, your rent and transportation and food, and what's left over is how much money you typically have left over every day. So they may say, okay, this guy has $50 left over every day, or this guy has $10 left over every day, or this person over here has $100,000 left over every day. I mean, you've got some billionaires out there. You had Jeff Bezos and Elon Musk, making literally millions of dollars an hour, probably millions of dollars a minute. So, you would look at them and you'd say, okay, one day's income, what do you have left over? Oh, he's got $3.5 million left over. So the fine becomes half of that. What they do is they say, okay, we're going to take half of that day's leftover money. So if you have $100 left over at the end of the day, the fine is $50. If you have $1 million left over at the end of the day, the fine is $500,000. And occasionally, we hear a story about this, like this guy, Rima Kiesla. He was hit with a thick $60,000 fine in in Finland, for going 64 in a 50-mile zone. $60,000 fine. Well, that was half of what he had left over for one day. And then they add multiples, by the way, in all these countries. They say, they can, in Denmark, for example, it can go up to 240 times or 120 days, basically 3 months worth of day fines. So, depending on how severe the crime is. Now, this is not a new idea. In 1748, Montesquieu, in his Spirit of the Laws, wrote, But do not rich people fear the loss of their goods? Cannot pecuniary penalties, financial penalties, be proportionate to fortunes? And then probably thinking of some criminal, high-profile serial criminal like Donald Trump back in 1748, he said, and finally, cannot infamy be joined with these penalties? Right. I mean, across America now, we've got a lot of cities that are looking at their cash bail policies and saying, this is crazy. Rich people post bail and walk. Poor people can't afford bail. They're in jail for months and months until they go to trial. And during that time, they can't earn in income. They lose their home. They lose their family. Just terrible things happen. And they may be found not guilty. Or the charges might be dropped. So, if somebody's dangerous to the public, the thinking goes, or a flight risk, then, you keep them in jail with no bail. And if they're not dangerous to the public or a flight risk, you let them go. At least until their trial. So I'm suggesting that this would be a good idea for us to do in America. We have tens of thousands of people in this country who lose their freedom every day because they can't cover what would be irrelevant fees or fines or court costs for a wealthy person. And that's morally wrong. It's legally stupid. And it shouldn't be happening in America. I mean, I thought we were supposed to have outline debtors' prisons. This literally, I said this goes way back. This literally goes back to the Magna Carta, 1215. That field in Runnymede where King John, put his seal on the Magna Carta. The 14th article says, a free man is not to be immersed, in other words, fined, for a small offense, save in accordance with the manner of the offense, and for a major offense, according to its magnitude, saving his sufficiency. Salvo contempto suo. In other words, saving his sufficiency, leaving him enough to provide for his family. So I think that we should seriously think about this because, the system that we have right now lets people like Donald Trump just say, oh, yeah, for $3.5 million a year, I can just, not go to jail. And he's got billions. But the average person, no, they get wiped out by this. I think it's time to bring some common sense and fairness to our justice system and adopting day fines that are as meaningful to Donald Trump as to the janitor in his building when they break the law is a great place to start. What say you?
This is the Thom Hartmann Program.
And, this also brings up the whole issue of bail, of cash bail as well. We'll be right back. And welcome back. AJ in Ojai, California. Hey, AJ, what's on your mind today?
Hey, I just wanted to say something. Last night, Trump got on Hannity.
Uh-huh.
And he said a bunch of stuff. And then he also said that he had lots of talks with Putin about Ukraine.
Mm-hmm.
And that must have been Helsinki when he went in the back room. And how come that's not documented?
You mean Helsinki?
Yeah, well, whatever, any of those conversations, because, there's transcribes of every conversation.
Well, there's supposed to be, but there weren't in any of the private conversations. I thought it was interesting that he said to Sean Hannity that he knows Vladimir Putin as well as he knows Sean Hannity. And he absolutely refused to denounce Putin. He said that... Go ahead.
For a long time, he was putting down NATO.
Right.
And I think he had this all planned with Putin.
Oh, absolutely.
In his second term, he didn't have to be elected, that they were going to go in and,
He would have pulled the United States out of NATO. I mean, let's give credit where credit is due. Joe Biden pulled NATO together on this thing. Joe Biden, President Biden was the guy who got all these countries working together to take refugees and to pony up money and military equipment and all kinds of things. I mean, it's a big deal. It's a big deal. So, AJ, I'm with you. Donald Trump, not our friend. Luke in St. Albans, Vermont. Hey, Luke, what's on your mind today? Luke? Luke, I cannot hear you. So I'm going to put Luke on hold, and Joyce can talk to him. He's on line 3, Joyce. And, we'll see where that goes. This whole issue, of should fines be scalable, as it were, I think is a pretty important one. It's in that we increasingly, I mean, here's what's the big story of the day. You know, Elon Musk wants to buy Twitter. It's $48 billion that he's offering for Twitter. What is one guy doing with $48 billion in the United States? I mean, this is just crazy. Okay, let's try it. Luke, you got your phone working now?
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, I just want to follow up with what you're saying about Elon Musk. Recently, when he bought the stock for Twitter, you know, he just, you know, casually defrauded the government or someone of $143 million and probably more.
How?
And we're doing nothing about it.
What are you talking about?
Oh, he did that. He filed his paperwork at the end of the day as opposed to the beginning of the day. And because of the stock price, it was like a $143 million windfall that was illegal.
Huh.
Because if he just filed his paperwork, you know, duplicitly or whatever, you know.
Yeah. Yeah. I don't know about that story.
He needs to be prosecuted. Like, there's a law for a reason. And it's sort of sickening when you can just flagrantly break these laws, make off.
Well, you know, there's a larger question here too, and that is, you know, should any media organ just be the plaything of one person, you know, or should we try to have our media institutions be, you know, public corporations that are accountable to a board of directors? And of course, that's no guarantee. I mean, you can get our crazed board of directors too. Luke, thanks for the call. It's coming up on 20 minutes past the hour. We'll be right back. Stick around. Missed my opening rant today? It's usually published over at HartmannReport.com, where you can read it and share it with your friends for free. Check it out, HartmannReport.com. Remember Paul Manafort? He used to be business partners with Roger Stone back in the day, you know, working for Republican politicians like, you know, Nixon and Reagan. And well, in 2004, he took a really sweet gig over in Ukraine, helping the Russians, you know, President Putin install Viktor Yanukovych as the president of Ukraine, a nice Putin puppet. That same year, though, the people of Ukraine said enough, and basically Yanukovych got driven out of the country. So they tried it again in 2010. Let's bring, you know, this Putin puppet back into Ukraine, Yanukovych. And it worked until 2014 when they got kicked out. So he gets kicked out of Ukraine, Manafort. So what does he do the next year, 2015? He decides to run the Trump campaign. Are you starting to see a pattern here? Yeah, could be. Okay, there's an entire video that outlines this whole timeline over at ThomHartmann.com. Check it out. And welcome back. So what's it going to take for Americans to see that Republicans are utterly cynical about voter fraud? We're getting case after case after case of Republicans. There was just two guys down in the Villages down in Florida, the largest retirement community in the United States, who got busted for voting twice for Donald Trump. I mean, it's like every week that goes by, there's a new story about a Republican who has committed voter fraud. It's never Democrats, right? The two Democrats that they caught, two black women that they caught and they charged with voter fraud. One in Texas, the other, I don't recall which state it was, but, you know, I mean, I think it was Ohio, literally arresting them, hitting, you know, high bail, facing years in prison. And in both cases, they actually hadn't voted. They had just simply tried to register to vote or tried to vote, and you know, the person at the election place said, well, here's a provisional ballot, and we'll check it out. And boom, they're in jail. I mean, they were upfront about the fact that they were both, you know, felons who were out of jail, and just didn't know, you know, which it was. But you know, we've got all these Republicans who I think, you know, basically Trump and the GOP have just basically promoted this. Hey, you know, anybody can vote as many times as they want in America. This is the Democrats' new scheme, so you should do it too. is essentially what they seem to be saying. And now you've got the guy who was number 2 to the president, or his chief of staff, the guy who ran the White House for the president, Mark Meadows, the former head of the Tea Party caucus, I think they call it the Freedom Caucus now, in the U.S. House of Representatives, registered to vote at a trailer in the woods in North Carolina. He was representing North Carolina in the U.S. House of Representatives. And he never lived there. It was like a trailer that, that he was using for storing old papers and stuff. And he's registered to vote there when he lives in Virginia, and he's been voting in Virginia. But he's still registered to vote in North Carolina. Claire McCaskill, the former Democratic senator from Missouri, was on MSNBC yesterday, and she said, put him in jail. Prosecute him and put him in jail. The Attorney General for North Carolina is one of those states that, would be blue if it weren't for gerrymandering. Right? The governor, the Secretary of State, I believe, the Attorney General are all Democrats. And the Democratic Attorney General, Josh Stein, opened this probe into Mark Meadows about a month ago. And guess what? The guy is registered to vote in a trailer that he's never lived in, never even stepped foot in, as far as anybody can tell, much less lived in it. I'm seeing a level of cynicism in the GOP and among their promoters in the media that I frankly don't recall having seen before in America. I've been around a long time. And, I remember cynical times in this country. I remember, cynicism around the war in Vietnam. I remember cynicism around 9/11 and Bush's, rush to war with Iraq and lying us into that war in Iraq. I recall these things. But there was never a call to action attached to them that would ultimately lead to violence. I mean, 5 people died on January 6th, let's not forget. Or, 7 or 8 people died as a result of January 6th. Several of them died in the days immediately following, including a police officer. That would lead to that violence, that would lead to violence, the Kyle Rittenhouse kind of violence. You've got Marjorie Taylor Greene and others on the hard right pushing this whole, Democrats are pedophiles who want to drink the blood of children in satanic rituals. The 2022 version of the blood libel from Protocols of the Elders of Zion. Only now it's a little more ecumenical. It's not just being directed against Jews. It's being directed against Democrats broadly. And what happened when that blood libel was directed against Jews? There was a Holocaust, and Jews were killed. I mean, this is troubling stuff. That they're willing to give people a pass on criminal activity, like trying to bring down the government, at the same time that they're trying to criminalize people who are just, go.
Our book today is Microtrends Squared by Mark Penn. The first chapter, The Building Blocks of Change Today, The Power of Microtrends. We live in a microtrends world. It's driven by granular, often opposite patterns of human behavior that seem small but punch above their size. We've identified these powerful patterns as microtrends, and the world is full of them. Together they are the dots of a global impressionist painting that comes to life when you step back and look at it holistically. These forces have only become more impactful in recent years, and they've started to upend society. 10 years ago, when I first identified these patterns in change and microtrends, I saw a world of boundless opportunities. I was over the top optimistic about how microtrends would produce a new world of personalized products on our shelf, and how in Washington they would produce an even greater selection of fresh, first-rate political choices. Of course, that's not exactly what happened. Instead, the information age has given way to the disinformation age, in which fake information abounds. The nation founded on free speech is grappling with how to live with free speech in the era of the internet troll. The optimism around our economy faded with the unexpected crash of 2008, followed by a historically slow recovery over a decade. Only now is it recovering. Unparalleled consumer choice is leading not to the growth of more startups, but to the dominance of just a few internet companies, which are amassing more and more power on the basis of data gleaned from willing but unknowing consumers. And the older generations, who in their own youth, led a rebellion, have now dug in their heels against the politics and culture of today's new generations. What makes the microtrend such a powerful tool in this moment is that it can unpack and explain changes that we're seeing that otherwise make no sense. On the surface, for example, the middle class can seem to be shrinking, and this is alarming. But it is only by digging deeper and seeing that education is driving more people into the upper classes that we can come to understand these overall statistics at a more molecular level. Often, two diametrically opposed trends are occurring at the same time, which would be invisible in the averages, but which leap out when understood as the result of a cauldron of microtrends. Today in politics, for example, there is no overall ideological shift. Instead, one group of moderates became more conservative and another group became more liberal, causing society to become both more liberal and more conservative at the same time, essentially canceling each other out. This increased polarization then produces even more gridlock and confusion. We can see similar tugs and pulls throughout society. While one group seeks more technology, another one wants to sit in the Amtrak quiet car. Some can't sit through a 6-second commercial. Others spend hours and hours binge-watching TV. Some live in a world of globalization, while others yearn for a return to greater nationalism. To explain all this, we've borrowed from Newtonian physics. For every trend, there is a counter-trend. It's human nature in the information age. Every move or desire in one direction seems to inspire a counter-move by another group in the opposite direction. For every radical group, there's a new conservative group. For every new product in mobile technology, there are those sticking to the flip phone. Only by understanding the complexity of these developments can we make sense of a world that seems senseless, confused, and even jumbled. While in 2007, microtrends allowed you to navigate the changes of the day, now microtrends squared lets you better understand the emerging chaos as the seesawing of opposite forces fighting for dominance in the social, political, and cultural worlds. In the last decade, technology was able to exploit and even conquer the world of microtrends with its ability to customize products and our lives based on AI and big data. But even as these attempts have transformed our lifestyles, they've also led to some serious unintended consequences that have further clouded society. Microtrends disentangles many of these shifts and lies at the source of many battles for power that have disrupted our world today. As you'll see throughout this book, those ongoing battles will result in some very unlikely winners, losers, and shifts in the overall power match of society. While the technology behind increased personalization of goods and services has been providing us with more choice in our daily life, we've instead been making fewer choices, burrowing into comfortable silos. We expected that the advances in our ability to customize goods and services would open us all up to a new world of never-ending experimentation. A decade later, exactly the opposite has occurred, and our society has become increasingly polarized, with people finding choices they like and picking them over and over again. In 2007, microtrends explained how the Starbucks economy had succeeded the Ford economy. In the Ford economy, you could have any color you wanted as long as it was black. The aim of industry was to mass-produce products at the lowest possible cost, and that meant standardization of goods. But the new economy of the 21st century was moving starkly away from that model, instead providing consumers with any color they wanted. The Starbucks economy was based on creating greater value through customization, even of simple products like coffee and tea. People everywhere became more individualistic in their tastes and were rebelling from carefully mowed lawns and white picket fences. The marketplace responded to these trends by allowing people to have it their own way, and they did. The theory was that more choice would result in a happier and more satisfied group of consumers, Variety would open consumers up to new experiences, in many ways bringing us closer together, allowing us to mix, match, and try out all sorts of new options. Something rather surprising happened, however, as consumers got more choice. The book Microtrends Squared. Our 1-hour free podcast recaps our show, and it's available wherever fine podcasts are found. And we have the full 3-hour podcast available over at thomhartmann.com if you want to really support our program.
And welcome back. Picking up your phone calls here. Tammy in Shepherdstown, West Virginia. Hey, Tammy, what's on your mind today?
Hey, Tom, I was just calling to tell you why I don't have my Biden-Harris signs on my car anymore, because I've had car windows smashed out. I've had roofing nails thrown down my driveway across my sidewalk. Wasn't one roofing nail before or after where the sidewalk begins or ends.
Wow.
So it's been pretty eye-opening. I've had people, I live at a four-way stop in a small college town. So it's fairly well-traveled, and I've had people pull up when I'm doing my dishes and make their fingers like a gun and go pew, 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 mimic shooting me.
Huh. You've been threatened.
Yeah, they're
essentially.
Oh, yeah, they're very, yeah, because see, in my windows, I have up, Black Lives Matter.
Yeah.
Love is love. In this house, this is what we believe. So, whether I have a political sign up or not, you kind of know that I follow a certain Jesus and not theirs.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Yeah, that's.
And I'm in the middle of a really, really red area. So, yeah, I am scared.
That's
amazing. And I've never, in 50 years, been scared as I am today of these people.
Most of my life I've seen bumper stickers, political bumper stickers on cars for all parties. I haven't seen a Biden-Harris, it's been a year and a half since the election, but I don't think I've ever seen a Biden-Harris bumper sticker. I think a lot of people are just as frightened as you are, and probably many of them have been threatened.
Yeah, after January 6th, we saw what they're capable of.
Yeah. Well, and on an ongoing basis. It's just amazing. Tammy, thank you. Thanks for sharing your story with us.
Thank you.
It's got to be a tough one. Paul in Lucerne, California. Hey, Paul, what's on your mind today?
Oh, hey. Well, that guy was talking about $140 million on the Elon Musk sale. All he did was hide his stocks, that he was buying the stock.
Okay, so let me, we had a caller earlier who was saying that Elon Musk was committing securities fraud or something, and I was like, I don't know what you're talking about. Can you?
Yes, he did.
How so?
Well, you're not allowed to keep your stock purchases that big a secret.
So you have to announce them in advance, or you have to announce them at the time you do them, or what?
You have to announce them when you're buying it. Who's buying this stock?
So
and he had a shell company do it. Stuff
so
like
he
that.
was.
They don't know if what he did was actually illegal or not, but what he did was he saved himself $140 million by doing this.
Right. So, in other words, if the word got out that Musk was buying stock, the stock price would go up, and then he would have to pay more for the stock. So he kept the word on the down low, so he bought the stock cheap, and then when the word came out, the stock went up.
Right.
He could just turn around and sell that stock and make millions. But, hey.
He's probably done it because Jack's not going to give up Twitter. And
Jack's already left.
He didn't get on the board of Twitter. Well, I know. I just say that just to be general.
Yeah.
Twitter's not. He's not on the board of Twitter. Twitter's doing pretty good right now. I don't see it happening.
He's offering shareholders though $48 a share, as I recall, or whatever it is. I think it was $48 billion. Pardon?
I do know this. Everybody's freaking out on Twitter.
Yeah, I can imagine. I mean, is Trump coming back?
As far as being picked on because I'm a Democrat in a red area, yeah, it happens. It happens a lot, actually.
What's that?
But I have 175-pound dogs. People don't come to my house.
So do you have Biden-Harris signs out or Democratic signs out?
Yeah, I have my signs when I come up and stuff. I'm in the local Democratic Party. I have signs.
Yeah.
I mean, my front yard looks like a billboard.
So is Lucerne? You live in Lucerne, California. Is that a fairly progressive community, or are you just? Do you think your dogs are the solution?
No, my dogs are the solution. because I live in a rural area. Rural areas are predominantly red in this country,
right?
And we have pockets of progressive. And I'm really super lucky because I have a lot of retired people in my community. I have a lot of retired teachers and stuff like that. So it's probably about a 60-40 split.
So they get it. The Republicans want to destroy Social Security and Medicare, and Democrats want to support them and strengthen them.
Oh yeah, we are at war with our Democratic Party. We sued them. They can no longer collect registered voters in our county because they picked on us too much and caused too much problems. But we registered the voters for them. We don't have to, but we believe as Democrats, everyone has a right to vote. So we register all voters.
Okay, I get it. Paul, thanks a lot. It's good talking to you, and thanks for the enlightenment on apparently what Musk is up to. Mike in Lutzen, Minnesota. Hey, Mike, what's on your mind today?
Oh, it's Lutzen. I talked to you a bunch of times when I lived in Minneapolis, and I was calling about the attacks that progressive or Democrats face on social media. When I moved up here, I started checking out the local congressman's Facebook page. He's a Republican, and I'll make comments on there, mainly on fact-checking and things like that. But I had two quick personal experiences I'll share. I had one poster on there that I disagree with, that I got in some debates with, actually looked me up on Google Maps and posted where I live. I don't have any personal information on my Facebook page, not a hometown or anything.
Wow.
And then I recently had one, and this is really disturbing, did an internet search for my name, found a psychologist that's living in Minneapolis who was accused of sexually abusing patients, and posted that constantly on this congressman's Facebook page. And I've counted now, it's been over 200 times he posted that on there. And then everybody jumps on about this guy should be arrested, he should be in jail,
What,
he shouldn't be there.
suggesting that you're that guy, you mean?
That I'm this person and wanting me to defend myself, that
Because you have the same name.
that it's not me.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, that's bizarre.
And on a congressman's Facebook page, no less.
Yeah. I'm seeing, I don't know, Mike, if you're old enough to remember the 80s, but I remember the McMartin preschool hysteria and during the Reagan years. And it seems like, they're trying to whip that up all over again, just the satanic ritual abuse, kind of stuff. And it's like I said earlier, this is the Protocols of the Elders of Zion strategy all over again.
And I have no recourse because these are, who knows where these people are that are posting this.
Right.
And I can't find out their real identity to do anything. I contacted my lawyer to make him aware. And I'm concerned that some crazy is going to drive down my driveway and do something.
Right, now that they posted your address.
Right. I mean, He hasn't posted my address, but he posted my hometown, and I only live in a town of 200 people, just outside. And the person that went on Google Maps, he admitted Google Maps, and now recently he's saying that he's calling my neighbors to find out about me.
Holy cow. All because you were challenging your Republican congressman on Facebook, challenging his political positions.
Correct. He'll do a posting, and a lot of it's I'll fact check, and I'll put links on there to correct it.
Right.
And it immediately turns personal. It can't just be a debate about the issues. Right. It always turns to you're a communist and all the other vile comments that follow it.
Yeah. Amazing. Mike, thanks for sharing that. I wish you well. Good luck. I mean, this also argues for a change in Section 230, I think it is, or 230 of the Telecommunications Act. Warren in Seattle. Hey, Warren, what's on your mind today? Warren?
Yeah, hi, Tom.
Hey.
I've been watching the January 6th investigation.
I'm listening.
And I never see any mention of the fact that they killed a policeman.
Well, he died the day after. But,
I know, but they stopped.
If that had happened on if the tables were turned, I guarantee you that would be what they would lead with every single time.
Yeah.
These people killed a cop.
Yeah, now here in Seattle, if a cop dies, it's a national holiday.
Right.
I mean, they stop everything. It's crazy. And the fact that they killed a cop should be one of the first things they talk about.
You would think. You would think, particularly because they're all, all right-wing law and order, yes, indeed. But you would think that our media would pay more attention to it too. Warren, I'm with you. I think it's bizarre the way that the media has basically downplayed the violence of January 6th and and Democrats, frankly, are kind of letting it slide too, which is problematic, shall we say. So, Warren, thanks a lot for the call. Spot on. We'll be right back. It's 44 minutes past the hour.
You're listening to Thom Hartmann. Visit thomhartmann.com for audio and video archives.
Back with your calls in just a moment. It's Talk Media for the sane among us. Yes, there are still some of us left. And welcome back. Rob in Fort Lupson, Colorado. Hey, Rob. Thanks for watching Free Speech. What's up?
I just wanted to call and tell you that I see a lot of Biden-Harris bumper stickers down around here.
You must live in a progressive area?
Yes, I do.
Yeah.
As a matter of fact, I walk around with a black T-shirt with great big silver letters that say F, Trump. I got it from the Steffi Miller show.
Uh-huh.
And I've never got anybody say anything. Well, I've had one guy say something to me, and that's it. And I've been wearing it since December 2020.
Wow.
And nobody's got, because, all these Trump supporters, they're only brave when they're in a group. They're just like the KKK.
Or when they're anonymous, like on social media.
Oh, yeah, that too. But, don't be afraid, people. Stand up, because that's what they want you to do, is to run around and cower and hide.
Yeah.
They're the ones doing it. Let them do it.
But, tell that to a mom, to the mom who called earlier who said that she put Biden-Harris stickers on her car and had her windows smashed in and roofing nails thrown in her driveway.
Oh, yeah, see, I didn't hear her say that. I just caught her at the end. I was outside and I came in.
That was the story that she told. She put a Biden-Harris bumper sticker on her car, and the next thing she knew, she had parked, someplace and somebody had smashed her window in. And then when she got home, somebody had put roofing nails in her driveway.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I didn't hear her say that. I just heard her say she was scared.
It goes kind of beyond just, well, again, I guess that kind of falls in. She didn't see the people who did it. That falls into this kind of cowardice thing that you were pointing out, Rob, of we'll get you, but you're not going to be able to see us, just like the old Klan guys wearing their hoods.
Exactly, yeah. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, because I've had people go, I see them look at me, and then I see them go blocks away and come around, 3 or 4 blocks, and come around, and I think, okay, here we go. And they stop and they say, hey, great T-shirt, we love that. And honk and wave and then drive off.
Yeah. I bought one when I was down in Mexico. The last time Louise and I took a vacation, our family went to a little town in Mexico for a week and rented a house and 2 of my brothers and their kids and everybody. And in town they have the obligatory tourist market where they're selling T-shirts and pottery and all kinds of stuff. And the hottest selling item that they had in the T-shirt store was a T-shirt that said F Trump, only in Spanish. And it had a picture of a guy who looked like, a bandolero, or whatever the word is, bandito or whatever. The guy with the big hat and the giant mustache and like right out of the 50s, and the rifle bullet belts crisscrossing his chest and, pointing his finger at the person looking at the T-shirt. And then underneath in giant letters, it said, it said Trump. And then it was blank your mother in Spanish. And I wore that one day here in Portland, and I got a couple of really weird looks, and I thought, maybe this isn't such a good idea. Plus it was obscene. But, yours is obscene, too.
Yes, it is. Well, my dad lives in Champion, Nebraska, and I went up there last March. And I went to the nearest town, which is Imperial, Nebraska, which has a lot of Trump supporters, and I wore it there, and nobody said anything negative. Matter of fact, I went into the convenience store, and the gal in there gave me a marriage proposal.
Okay, Bob. Well, you're the counter story to the story. Thanks a lot for the call, and thanks for watching Free Speech TV. We'll be right back. 48 minutes past the hour. Hey, I've got a new book out. It's called The Hidden History of Big Brother in America, How the Death of Privacy and the Rise of Surveillance Threaten Us and Our Democracy. Available wherever you find fine books. So you remember the administration originally said that we're going to give 4 free COVID tests to every household in America. And you can do that, get them delivered by the post office for free by going to covidtests.gov, covidtests.gov. But they said that they're not going to provide free test kits to people on Medicare. Instead, you have to go to covidtest.gov and get your 4 free test kits. Well, they have rethought this. This is a brand new policy. And this will be the first time that Medicare covers free over-the-counter tests of any kind for people who are, or offers free over-the-counter tests for anybody who's on Medicare. The pharmacy, Medicare pays the pharmacy direct, and you pick it up from your pharmacy. So just an FYI on that, and there are a few other dimensions that have to do with TRICARE and a few other things. We've got a video about it that's over at thomhartmann.com that you can check out. And welcome back. Kent in Hempstead, North Carolina. Hey, Kent, what's on your mind today?
Hey, how you doing, Tom?
Good.
I wanted to give you the history of North Carolina visits by Trump. That he came down here to Charlotte, I believe it was, and told people to vote by mail, and then to go to the polls and vote there, try to vote there, and see if they catch you. Now,
oh, really? He encouraged people to commit voter fraud.
That should have been made a more big deal of, because he was knocking the fact that most Democrats during the pandemic were voting by mail, and everybody knew it, and that's why he put DeJoy in that job to screw up the post offices.
Right. Yeah. No, I got it.
His visits are memorable to me because he had come to Wilmington in 2015, and that was where he made the statement about let's let our Second Amendment people maybe take care of the Hillary problem. And so those things, the things that he says, and I had have a FSTV sticker on the bumper of my car, and I came out from the grocery store, and my trunk lid had been keyed. And I'm thinking, I'd be glad to talk about that with people, and they don't have to, demonstrate that kind of hostility just because they don't agree on our politics and who might be telling a lie and who might be telling the truth. But I would also like to ask the viewers, next time they get into a discussion with a Trumper, ask them how many of them sent back the $1,400 that was in Joe Biden's COVID relief package.
Right, the American Rescue Plan.
And I have a feeling, the rescue plan, and with the infrastructure jobs that are coming. I mean, we have a bridge across the Cape Fear River that gets stuck about every 10 times they open it, and it was built after World War I. So, the Trumpers don't really have much of a leg to stand on as far as what gets done and what doesn't get done. But all three of both my senators and my rep voted against the stabilizing of insulin supplies for people with that are diabetic or have diabetic kids.
Yeah.
So if you
Republicans just want the executives in the pharma company to make more millions. They don't give a rat's ass about people with diabetes.
Sure, and I don't think enough is being made of the 40+% profit increase that all corporations, they're averaging 25% plus higher.
Oh, we're looking at the highest corporate profits in the history of the United States right now.
Absolutely. And I call what good it does. I call Tillis and Burr's offices, and I asked them why are they so bent on not being honest with us about where their money comes from.
Yeah.
You know, we know where it comes from. It's coming from energy and pharmaceutical companies and real estate outfits. So anyway, though, that's my comment. I wanted to refresh people's memory that Trump came down and told people to try to commit voter fraud.
Right.
So catching Mark Meadows is
like
not really
par for the course. Yeah, it's exactly what you'd expect. Okay, Ken, thank you very much for that. George in Chicago. Hey, George, you wanted to get back to the idea of civil fines.
Yeah, when you were talking about that earlier in the show, excuse me, I recalled, I think I saw this on a public television broadcast some years ago, and I think you may have even talked about this on your show in the past, but there are countries in Europe, Scandinavian, I believe, and Norway in particular, where serious traffic violations and driving under the influence, the fines are based on your income and or your wealth and or your ability to pay, or some combination of the three. I don't remember.
Right, yeah, they call them day fines, and they're based on how much money you have left over at the end of one day. And then they take half of that. So, you know, if you're Elon Musk and you've got, $10 million left over at the end of a day, it's a $5 million fine. If you're, a guy who's making minimum wage and you got 50 cents left over at the end of the day, it's a 25-cent fine.
Yeah, and the case that I sort of remember in particular was a Norwegian guy, rich, wealthy guy, who had something like a Ferrari Testarossa that he was operating something well over 100 kilometers in excess of the speed limit. And his fine, if I remember right, was $600,000 or $700,000.
Yeah, it was huge. There have been a number of those. There was one in Finland. There was one in Denmark. I don't know about Norway, but there have been a couple of them that have swept the media. And yeah, I'm with you, George. I think we need to do this.
Yeah, but by everything else in this country, that kind of exquisite justice will never be obtained until Citizens United and all those other bad decisions are gone, because the rich write the laws.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. And we need to do something about it. I'm with you. George, thank you for the call. Karen in Muskogee, Oklahoma. Hey, Karen, what's up?
Hi, Tom. Last calling about your thing about the fines for Biden and Harris.
Yeah.
Well, back when Obama and Biden were running, we had signs out front of our house, and they were stolen every time we put them out. I am frightened to death where I live in our administration in Oklahoma. They've already called on people to shoot all Democrats, so there's no Biden signs on my car or anything.
Who said shoot Democrats, Karen?
I don't know. It was on the news here. Somebody in the administration said maybe we ought to just go shoot all the Democrats.
Well, I remember Trump saying that there needed to be a Second Amendment solution to Hillary Clinton.
Yeah, well, there's that too. But let me tell you something funny. When we lived in another state.
Seconds.
Okay, one of our neighbors got into a conversation with my husband about race, and he was saying that mixed-race children never amounted to anything.
Oh, my God.
And my husband said, oh, I know of one really good one that has made wonderful progress, and he's held in high esteem. And the neighbor said, who? I can't think of any. My husband said, your president.
Yeah, there you go. Man, Karen, thank you very much for the call. We'll be right back. Stick around.
You're listening to Thom Hartmann.
These companies support the Thom Hartmann Program. They are HelloFresh, the #1 meal kit delivery service. More info at HelloFresh.com, code TOM. The hidden history of Big Brother in America, how the death of privacy and the rise of surveillance threaten us and our democracy, by Thom Hartmann. More information at all book outlets. Wild Alaskan Company, 100% sustainable wild-caught seafood delivered right to your door. More info at wildalaskancompany.com/Tom. Cozy Earth, better sleep, better you. More info at cozyearth.com, promo code TOM. the latest views and opinions from U.S. politics and other fascinating subjects too, including cutting-edge science reports at HartmannReport.com. And Dinovite, a whole food supplement for your pet's immune system. More info at Dinovite.com.
We say fight back!
It's Thom Hartmann. We're reading from A Dark Money, The Hidden History of the Billionaires Behind the Rise of the Radical Right in today's Thom Hartmann University Book Club. This is from Chapter 11, page 271. The official opening of the 112th Congress took place on January 5th, 2011, when Nancy Pelosi, the Speaker of the House, handed off an oversized ceremonial gavel to her successor, John Boehner. But a new era of ultra-conservative billionaire influence had already begun. Before the public swearing-in ceremony got underway, David Koch, whose donor network had spent at least $130.7 million on winning a Republican majority, was in the new Speaker-to-be's office, ornate office, chatting amiably with his staff. The People's House was under new management, and critics would suggest new ownership. While Koch was a very public presence on the Capitol, his political adjutant, Tim Phillips, the president of Americans for Prosperity, was deep in the inner sanctum of the congressional committee that mattered most to the bottom line of Koch Industries. Phillips's most important destination that day was the House Energy and Commerce Committee, which under the new Republican majority had now increased its power to block President Obama's environmental agenda in Congress. The committee could bury progress on climate change and harass the EPA for the foreseeable future. And then just jumping through a little anecdote about Lee Fong and David Koch, they continue. In Plutocrats, the rise of the new global super rich and the fall of everyone else, journalist Krista Freeland describes how those with massive financial resources almost universally use them to secure politics and policies beneficial to their interests, often at the expense of the less well-off. In the United States, a number of studies have shown that in recent years, this tendency has distorted politics in very specific ways. In a study he conducted for the nonpartisan Sunlight Foundation, the political scientist Lee Drutman found that increasingly concentrated wealth in America resulted in more polarization and extremism, especially on the right. Very rich benefactors in the Republican Party were far more opposed to taxes and regulations than the rest of the country. He discovered the more Republicans depend upon 1% of the 1% donors, the more conservative they tend to be. The 112th Congress soon unfolded as a case study of what David Frum, an advisor to the former President George W. Bush, described as the growing and, in his view, destructive influence of the Republican Party's radical rich. The radicalization of the party's donor base, he observed, has propelled the party to advocate policies that were more extreme than anything since Barry Goldwater and his 1964 presidential campaign. It also led Republicans in Congress to try tactics they would never have dared use before, end quote. Hard data supported this. Harvard's Theta Scott poll found that the House took the biggest leap to the far right since political scientists began recording quantitative measurements of legislators' positions. There was no better example than the Koch's newly won influence over the House Energy and Commerce Committee. In the previous Congress, the panel had been chaired by Henry Waxman, the liberal Democrat from California, who had quarterbacked the House's successful passage of the cap-and-trade bill, only to see it die in the Senate. Now the new Republican leadership stocked the committee with oil industry advocates, many of whom owed huge campaign debts to the Kochs. Koch Industries PAC was the single largest oil and gas industry donor to members of the panel, outspending even ExxonMobil. It had donated to 22 of the committee's 31 Republican members and 5 of its Democratic members, too. In addition, 5 out of the 6 Republican freshmen on the committee had received outside support from Americans for Prosperity. Meanwhile, many of the new committee members had signed an unusual pledge swearing fealty to the Koch's agenda. They promised to vote against any kind of carbon tax unless it was offset by comparable spending cuts, an unlikely scenario. The no climate tax pledge was invented by Americans for Prosperity in 2008, when the Supreme Court cleared the way for the EPA to regulate greenhouse gases as it does other pollutants. The Koch's pledge was modeled on the enormously successful one that the anti-tax crusader Grover Norquist had used to intimidate Republican lawmakers from raising taxes. But in this instance, it served not a cause so much as a company. By the start of the legislative session in 2011, fully 156 members of Congress had signed the Koch brothers' no climate tax pledge. Many returning members of the House Energy and Commerce Committee had already taken the pledge, and of the 12 new Republicans on the panel, 9 were signatories, including 5 of the 6 freshmen. A prime example of the symbiotic relationship between the Kochs and the committee was Morgan Griffith, who had defeated Rick Boucher in the district that represented Saltville, Virginia, and was among the new wave of appointees to the Energy and Commerce Committee who were openly indebted to the Koch brothers for their seats. Americans for Prosperity operatives were guests of honor at a victory rally soon after the election, at which Griffith gushed, quote, "I'm just thankful that you all helped me out in so many ways," end quote. The Koch's investment soon paid off. Once in office, Griffith became an outspoken skeptic of mainstream climate science, drawing national ridicule for lecturing scientific experts as they testified before Congress that they needed to consider the possibility that Mesopotamia and the Vikings owed their success to global warming, and the melting ice caps on Mars showed that humans were not its cause on Earth. Congressman Griffith became a lead player in the House Republicans' war on the EPA, demanding that the agency be reined in. Within a month after he took office, he and other House Republicans gutted the EPA budget by a punishing 27%. Dark Money, The Hidden History of the Billionaires Behind the Rise of the Radical Right by Jane Mayer.
This is the Thom Hartmann Program.
And welcome back to the second hour of our program. On the line with us is J. David McSwane. He's the author of a new book, Pandemic, Inc., Chasing the Capitalists and Thieves Who Got Rich While We Got Sick. He's also an investigative reporter with ProPublica's D.C. office. We frequently feature their work here on this program. They just do such extraordinary, great work. DavidMcSwane.com is his website and his Twitter handle. David, welcome to the program. What got you started on this book?
Thanks for having me. Well, I got started reporting really in the early months of the pandemic as we realized the Trump administration was woefully ill-prepared and hospitals didn't have the supplies they needed. I was here in D.C. watching the outflows of just hundreds of millions of dollars and eventually billions to source these supplies. We had something like 1% of what we needed in the national strategic stockpile. So we just saw contracts flying all over the place to unknown companies and companies that we could tell had just been created, and pretty big deals, including, a $34.5 million deal given to a person who'd never had a federal contract to supply to the Veterans Administration, which is the, which oversees the largest hospital network in the country. And from there, it sort of set off a year and a half of just really wacky reporting following how the federal government was being taken for a ride and taxpayers were being screwed.
It seems that if you had $100 to start a new company, to file your incorporation papers with the state, and you had a friend like Peter Navarro or Jared Kushner, you could make millions of dollars basically on BS. I mean, on nothing, and not be held to account. Am I exaggerating?
No, those are sort of two separate issues. So one of the first contractors I noticed was a company called Airboss of America, ultimately Canadian owned. And as I was just sort of combing through what is usually kind of boring contracts and purchasing data, noticed an entry in there that said, this deal, something like $90 million for, the sort of like hazmat respirators that you saw Dustin Hoffman wear in an Outbreak, was ordered by the White House, which you just don't see. And that's when we got a sense that political appointees, somebody in the White House, was steering contracts, which you can't have for obvious reasons. And we got that story out. And as we dug in deeper, it seemed there were sort of two tracks. There was a connection to the Trump White House, which was fantastic, and you could get a deal, and Peter Navarro and others would push for that. But you could also just be a no-name company. You could file for an LLC on Monday and have a $10 million contract with FEMA by Wednesday or Thursday, because we were that desperate, and pretty much all vetting had been thrown out the window. At the time, the federal government denied that, but the evidence was just mounting.
My recollection is that Trump had put Jared Kushner in charge of a little group of people who were, apparently a lot of them were like friends of his from college, or something like that. I mean, these are, young people in their 20s and early 30s who were organizing this stuff on spreadsheets, and it was a cluster. I mean, it was a mess. Am I remembering that right?
Yeah, it was total madness. I detail this in the book. They came to be known by the Navy admiral who was actually in charge of supply chain logistics as the Kushner kids, because he shows up to work. He'd been pulled over from the Pentagon to FEMA. He shows up to work and he sees all these young people who don't really know where they're going, and realizes there's a bunch of civilians who've been inserted into the national pandemic response. And what had happened was there was the official task force, which was headed up by Vice President Mike Pence, which in and of itself, some people balked, because you're supposed to have an emergency management expert, not a politician, in charge of these things. But that was the official task force. And then Jared Kushner, on his own, using his network of well-to-do folks and his private cell phone, organized his own sort of shadow task force. And it really overshadowed the larger effort, clumsy as it was, but, legitimate and serious government workers trying to source things, because they were referring, contractors to the state of New York, for instance. And in one case, ventilators. This guy said, I can deliver, hundreds of ventilators, and he got a major contract, and he never had access to ventilators. So you just had people who didn't know what they were doing, kind of overshadowing the effort to catch up.
Did he keep the money?
In that instance, he was actually paid up front, which most of the time the federal government, at least, well, states and cities would, the federal government wouldn't pay up front, but he was paid up front, and they are currently suing to claw back some of that money. I haven't looked at the case file in a little while, but right. Yeah, they had to try to claw that back.
Jared Kushner's dad went to prison for being a professional grifter. Kushner just got what looks to a lot of people like a $2 billion payoff from the Saudi government for, covering up or helping cover up, or at least not reacting to the murder of Jamal Khashoggi, and, for pipelining a bunch of military weaponry that Congress tried to stop from the United States into Saudi Arabia for their war on Yemen. Is there evidence that Kushner was corruptly, with corrupt intent, trying to game this system?
We may yet find out more details to that effect. In my reporting, I found that a lot of it was innuendo. I mean, you got to remember, a lot of the contractors who came out of the woodwork didn't even have things to provide. And, inserting Kushner, who, as you mentioned, is really kind of a, backdoor deal, working in the shadows kind of guy, just really added to the suspicion that something was up here. I mean, I will say that pre-pandemic, selling masks is not the best business model. It's pretty hard to do. There's not a lot of demand. That's part of why we were so reliant on China. So there were a few companies that were poised to really get big deals, such as the one I mentioned earlier, Airbus of America, because they were in the industry and they had a legitimate product that they could sell. But we're really talking about just thousands of random companies coming out of the woodwork and suddenly being dubbed, major contractors.
How much did we lose, we, the federal government? How much did we lose to, fraud and theft and and BS artists when the Trump administration had this stumble-bum response to this COVID pandemic?
I wish I could give you a figure. I detail several anecdotes in the book, but this was so widespread. You have that initial gush of money to try to source supplies, get ahead of it, protect healthcare workers. There was a lot lost in there. There was a lot of price gouging. That's really hard to quantify, to really establish the scope. And then you have the Paycheck Protection Program, about $800 billion in small business loans, many of them forgivable. And this, that program was just a bonanza for fraud because people could just easily lie, stick a couple numbers on their paperwork and walk away with millions the next week. Law enforcement and prosecutors are going to be catching up to this for a long time. And that's part of why President Biden in his recent State of the Union address mentioned the creation of a special prosecutor for pandemic fraud. It is a profound mess that we're going to be grappling with for a long time.
Yeah, it seems like Democrats are always brought in to clean up the messes the Republicans leave behind. It's pretty breathtaking. We're talking with J. David McSwane. His book is Pandemic, Inc., Chasing the Capitalists and Thieves Who Got Rich While We Got Sick. David, last question, essentially. What do we learn from this?
I'm glad you asked that. The book, in writing this, I was like everybody else enduring a pandemic and was very conscious that, we're all tired. We'd love to move on. So my goal isn't to depress this further, but I really think this book is a blueprint of exactly what not to do. There are a few obvious things, such as make sure you fund the National Strategic Stockpile, make sure the president invokes the Defense Production Act early, from the political side, doesn't deny an inconvenient pandemic. But the truth is we're still in this. We're still learning lessons. The Biden administration really bet big on vaccines, which is great, but didn't pay enough attention to testing. So, we had Omicron coming in earlier this year and late last year. There's a lot we're still wrapping our heads around. Mm-hmm. But as far as, the grift and the waste, I feel like this book really shows a sort of damning portrayal of how the government, including states, were taken for a ride and taxpayers got screwed.
Amazing. J. David McSwane is the author. The book is Pandemic, Inc., Chasing the Capitalists and Thieves Who Got Rich While We Got Sick. David, thanks so much for dropping by. It's great talking with you.
Thanks for having me.
My pleasure. We'll be back. Will naked racism continue to work in the GOP? And a crazy alert. A Trumpster praises Adolf Hitler, yes, for overcoming homelessness. I'll tell you about it.
This is the Thom Hartmann Program.
Right after this break. Stick around at 16 minutes past the hour. And welcome back. Miriam in Albuquerque, New Mexico. Hey, Miriam, thanks for watching Free Speech TV. What's on your mind today?
Yes. Well, first of all, I'd like to say, like everybody else, I'm a first-time caller, long-time listener or watcher on my computer and Free Speech TV. And also just wanted to give you another variation on that bumper sticker thing that happened to me. I live in a blue state, in a blue city. And as a matter of fact, I campaigned for Bernie both times he was running. And one day, toward the end of the last election, we had a lot of Trump trains come through my city. And one day I'm at a stoplight, and some guy's honking the hell out of his horn behind me, and I have no idea why. I mean, the light was red. I couldn't move. So I had to wait, enduring this until the light changed. And then I went around the corner. He sped up and went around me and then in front of me, waving his arms and I don't know what. And I'm going like, this sounds suspicious. So, and he went over to the side of the road to park, and I made out like I was going to do the same thing behind him. But at the last minute, I saw a little tiny street that he was on one side of, and before I got to that point, I turned down that street and got away. I couldn't figure out for the longest time, because this was in the middle of the day. I was a lone female in my car, and I'm going like, I don't want to take on anybody for whatever reason.
Right.
So I got out of there. But anyway, it didn't occur to me until someone pointed out to me. So, it's probably because, like I said, this was just before the elections. The thing is, I had not only a Bernie sticker on my car, but I had a Thom Hartmann University sticker on my car and a Stephanie Miller sticker on my car. Plus a couple
it's a double whammy.
Saying, vote as if your rights depend on it. Things like that. Now in this city, that would be perfectly fine. But during the Trump train era, this happened to me twice. Another time, somebody played a loudspeaker through his truck behind me, and it sounded like there was a ambulance or something, behind me, So I pulled over to the side, and it was just a regular truck, and he kind of gave me the finger as he went by, going like, "What the heck?"
But he had a siren?
Yeah, he had a siren. Yeah, but
that's illegal in a lot of states.
But just a regular. Yeah, excuse me. I'm sorry. What did you say?
I said that's illegal in a lot of states to have a siren or to have blue lights. Anything that might intimate that you're an emergency vehicle, you're not allowed to do.
Yeah, he didn't have blue lights. This was a regular white pickup truck.
Right.
But he did have some kind of speaker system or siren or something, and he played it right behind me, and I'm real loud and I was startled, because I wasn't expecting it. I pulled over to the side, and he just went on his merry way, and I'm going like, "What the heck?"
Wow.
So anyway, just another Trump train story, another bumper sticker story. One time somebody told me to take my bumper stickers off, and I'm going, "Nah, they're on there for good."
Yeah. Well, you are a brave woman, Miriam. I congratulate you. Thank you so much for sharing your story with us, for calling in.
You're quite welcome.
It's great talking with you. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Yep. We'll be back. It's 20 minutes past the hour. Stick around. Change starts with you. You can be calling your Democratic or Republican representatives to let them know what you think by calling 202-224-3121. It's the Capitol switchboard. It'll get you right through to them. So how do you know which party has the most crooks in it? The Republicans are always saying, those Democrats, they're soft on crime and, a lot of murders in Democrat-run cities. Well, for the record, first off, red states and red counties have a higher per capita murder rates than do blue states and blue counties. This is just a fact. But secondly, let's look at some of the administrations. The Obama administration had no criminal indictments. The Jimmy Carter administration had 1. The Bill Clinton administration had 2. But what about the Republican administrations? It was 16 for George W. Bush. It was 26 criminal indictments for Ronald Reagan. Richard Nixon's administration had 76 criminal indictments. And of course, the full-time professional rapist and grifter, Donald Trump, he had 215 criminal indictments. So who's really soft on crime? We got a video about it over at ThomHartmann.com. You can check it out. And welcome back. So, what's it going to take for Americans, I guess, basically, to figure out that racism should be a badge of shame, not a badge of honor? Andrew Clyde is a congressman from Georgia, and he got in the middle of this thing. There is a federal judge. His name is Joseph W. Hatchett. He's passed away now. He was the first black man to serve on the Florida Supreme Court. That bill was sponsored by both of Florida's Republican senators. It was backed by all 27 of Florida's members of the House of Representatives, Republicans and Democrats. It was a simple piece of legislation that basically would name a federal courthouse. Now, these things require 2/3 in the Senate and in the House and Senate to pass. And Andrew Clyde got all bent out of shape about this guy because apparently back in 1999, he ruled in a case where a public school had a policy of requiring students to participate in prayers at graduation ceremonies. And a parent sued and said, no, this is unconstitutional. The Supreme Court has ruled that you can't force children to participate in public prayers. By the way, that issue is coming back before the Supreme Court. But nonetheless, this was 1999. And this judge said, no, the Supreme Court said that's unconstitutional. You can't force children to participate in public school prayers. And so Representative Andrew Clyde started this, whisper campaign in the Republican caucus in the House of Representatives that we can't name this federal courthouse after the first black judge in the history of Florida because he stood up for the Constitution. I mean, it's just insane. He said, quote, he voted against student-led school prayer in Duval County in 1999. I don't agree with that. That's it. I just let the Republicans know that information on the House floor. I have no idea if they knew it or not. Well, once they learned that, they decided, well, to hell with this judge or his memory. I mean, his family was all excited. There was, civil rights groups. It was a big deal. Andrew Clyde. Andrew Clyde, by the way, the guy who took this down, he also voted against giving the Congressional Gold Medal to the Capitol Police who were there on January 6th. He voted against that. He voted against certifying Joe Biden as President of the United States. He voted against the Emmett Till anti-lynching bill. You starting to get a sense of who this guy is? He voted against recognizing Juneteenth as a holiday. And, odds are he'll get reelected. Racism does not apparently hurt you if you are an elected official in a red state or a red county, which makes the point that I keep trying to make here, which is that racism isn't a bug in the GOP. It's a feature. It's at the core of the Republican Party. The Republican Party is basically all about white privilege and white power. And they've got basically nothing else. I mean, when they actually talk about policies that they want to see happen, keeping in mind that the GOP basically, their main purpose in life is to serve the interests of very wealthy people. So you get, Senator Scott from Florida coming along and saying, well, here's the 11-point plan for the GOP. He's in charge of getting Republican senators reelected, right? He's the chairman of that group that raises money to, so here's his 11-point plan that we should all run on. Point number 1, 60% of Americans make so little money that they don't pay federal income taxes. They do pay, Social Security and FICA taxes and things, but let's start hitting them with a tax. Let's raise taxes on 100 million Americans, and let's sunset Social Security and Medicare after 5 years. It's not going over real well with the voters, even the Republicans. So Rick Scott is kind of trying to downplay it now, and the Republicans are not talking about it. So even when they come out and talk about what their actual policies are, people are like, no, I don't really want that. So what are they left with? Oh, yeah, racism. It works with a lot of white people. Don't ever underestimate it. And, of course, homophobia and that whole, misogyny. I got a crazy alert for you on the other side of the break, and I'll pick up your phone calls.
You're listening to the Thom Hartmann Program. Call 202-808-9925.
So stick around. We will be right back with both.
Our book today is My Life in the Black Party. The title is Just Another N-Word, and it's by Field Marshal Don Cox, his life in the Black Panther Party. This is from Chapter 5, page 47. The chapter is titled, Use What You Got to Get What You Need. Before we entered into a direct relationship with the Panthers, our group had wanted to prove our worthiness by our actions. Since that was no longer in question, contact was made and a rendezvous fixed to meet at Huey's pad on Telegraph Avenue in Oakland. I don't remember much about that first gathering, other than meeting David Hilliard, the Panther Party's chief of staff, for the first time. The only thing that stands out in my memory is a question from Huey as we were sipping coffee. He asked if I didn't think it better to be properly equipped before going into action. He suggested it was best to first rip off the necessary funds to get everything we needed in advance of launching a major effort. I had practically memorized his essay, The Correct Handling of a Revolution, in which he spoke of teaching by example. And so I blurted out the first thing that came to mind, which was, use what you got to get what you need. After a long, hot summer of 1967, with the rebellions in Newark, Detroit, and elsewhere, we felt that our preparations had, at least, put us on the same level as the rest of the country, and that the revolution would not pass us by. Our San Francisco group started attending and participating in any and all functions relevant to black people. And we tried to let everyone in our area, and we tried to get to know everyone in our area associated with the struggle. We also continued our community meetings. News of the death of Che Guevara in October of that year had us walking around in a stupor for a while, and although that came as a severe blow to the international struggle for freedom and justice of all people, we were proud to be among those who had responded to his battle cry and had picked up the fallen arms. Huey asked if we would conduct a meeting on Hunter's Point for him. He was supposed to go, but something had come up and he couldn't make it. We were honored that he thought enough of us to ask, and we were more than enthusiastic to do whatever he wanted. It was at that meeting that we had a new, surprising experience. We met our first resistance in the form of Adam Rogers. He was supposed to have been the biggest, baddest N-word on Hunter's Point, but when we encountered him, he came across like an Uncle Tom. He seemed to be impressed with our firearms demonstration, but he was violently against the idea of black people arming themselves for self-defense. He was convinced that would increase repression, even though history proved him wrong. When we examined the history of repression of black people, the only time there was significant decline in police violence and murders perpetrated against blacks was precisely the period when blacks were organized and had access to guns. Given the wave of terror and violence against blacks that continues to sweep the country, I truly believe there is a lesson to be learned from that fact. Rogers was one of the wounded in the Hunters Point Rebellion of the year before, and a photograph of him had been used by the news media to illustrate articles on the riots that broke out following the killing of a black teenager by police that September. Because of that, we were even more surprised by his reaction. It was not until later that we discovered that the administration of San Francisco Mayor Joseph Alito had sent in money after the rebellion and had bought off the so-called bad N-words. The same technique was used from coast to coast. Despite Rogers, most everyone seemed to like what we had to say and really related to the firearms demonstration. Several people wanted to take courses in handling weapons, and so I fixed a rendezvous for the following Saturday at the parking lot of the abandoned shopping center right on top of Hunters Point. The next day I arrived at the point at 7 in the morning in order to get set up before people began to gather. There wasn't going to be any target practice, but I would be firing a few shots in the air by way of demonstration. I knew that would pose no problem as far as the police were concerned. Due to their racism, whenever they heard shots on the point, they generally looked the other way. Once, during a dispute between two gangs, shooting broke out, and instead of police coming in to break it up, they sealed off the area and let them shoot it out. The gun battle lasted 24 hours, and the police didn't return until the next day. At around 8 o'clock, I saw David Hilliard's car driving up, which I found surprising because we had only seen each other a couple of times before. As the car approached, I recognized Emory Douglas and George Murray. Everyone had strange looks on their faces that made it clear that something was wrong. Damn, Huey had been shot and captured. He had shown up at David's wounded and bleeding heavily. There was real concern for his life, so David drove him to the hospital and left him on the steps, then drove straight to San Francisco to find me. He said Huey had asked him to ask me to help out in the aftermath, specifically dealing with the passenger who had been in Huey's car at the time of the shootout, with Officer John Frey of the Oakland Police, who'd been killed. There was also the problem of the guns Huey had stockpiled. I'll never understand why David didn't just bring the guns with him, but he hadn't, and I was obliged to go back into the area, get everything, and get back out safely. That might sound easy, but the shootout had occurred less than 3 hours before, and there was one policeman dead and one seriously wounded, so it was hot over in Oakland, to say the least. There was no time to go by the house and unload the guns I had on hand for the training, so I followed David back to Oakland with a trunk full of weapons. David took me into the backyard of a house that had a lot of weeds and a stack of old lumber in which he had stashed the gun. In his state of excitement, he couldn't remember exactly where the pistol was, and while we were looking, an elderly black woman came out of the house next door and asked what we were doing. David kept searching and didn't look up. She then said, "If you don't come out of there, I'm going to call the police." I began to panic and told David to say something to the woman. When he rose up, she recognized him and calmed down. This was David's house, and she was his neighbor. On the one hand, I was relieved, but on the other, if the police were looking for the passenger who'd been with Huey, it was certain they wouldn't miss David's house, as both were known Panthers. Finally, he found the gun, and it continues from there.
Hey, thanks so much for sharing our program and for reaching out to our stations and sponsors and letting them know that you're listening. It really means a lot to us. 27 Republican senators sent a letter to the Energy Secretary, Jennifer Granholm, echoing talking points that the American Petroleum Institute pushed out on Twitter recently, saying that basically if we're going to stop importing Russian oil into the United States, which, by the way, the Russian oil imports into the U.S. are just a trickle. It's just a tiny drop in the bucket. If we're going to stop doing that, we need to, and these are some quotes from the API Twitter, we need to unleash America's energy. We need to release permits for energy development on federal lands. We need to issue offshore leasing plans for the next 5 years. We need to accelerate energy permitting infrastructure. We need to reduce regulatory and legal uncertainty. Right. It's a scam. And these 27 Republican senators are owned by the big fossil fuel companies because the Supreme Court allowed it with their Citizens United decision. We have to do something about this. There's a whole video rant about it over at thomhartmann.com. Check it out. And welcome back, picking up your phone calls here on this marvelous day. Shayna in Prairie Grove, Arkansas. Hey, Shayna, what's on your mind today?
Love your show.
Thank you.
I was going to comment on the Biden signs.
Mm-hmm.
During the election, I put a sign in my yard that said Veterans for Biden, which I am a veteran, but you don't have to be. And nobody bothered it. Across the street, they had a Biden sign, and they wrote on it, Biden sniffs children's hair. And even if you're in a red state, everybody loves veterans. So I'm just putting out a suggestion, try putting Veterans for Biden-Harris. And I will admit, though, on my car, it's a little more subliminal. I did put, I got a picture of a blue ocean wave. Mm-hmm. With no comments, and put it on upper left, and then put a little thing of the American flag underneath it.
Oh, blue wave, yeah.
Blue wave, yeah, an American, not, the Confederate, which you see a lot around here. But that was just my suggestion, is try Veterans, because even in a red state, everyone, loves veterans, so maybe that would help.
That's good advice. Shayna, thank you. Thanks for, life experience here. I appreciate that. David in Tulsa, Oklahoma. Hey, David, what's up?
Hi, Tom. So I was listening to Karen. I believe she was from Muskogee, Oklahoma. I live in Tulsa. The person who said that they should shoot all Democrats,
right,
is not in any administration. He is running for the Oklahoma State Senate in Rogers County, Oklahoma.
Oh, really?
Northeastern Oklahoma. His name is Jaron Jackson. I believe he's taken the video down, but he does have other videos up on his Twitter page still of him shooting a printer because he's saying that it's the Dominion voting machine.
Oh, jeez.
It's ridiculous. I mean,
I'm listening, David.
The country.
Oh, he faded out. Yeah. Yeah, wasn't there a rocker, an old washed-up rocker who said something like that, too?
I think so.
Yeah. I'm not sure. I don't want to name a name without being certain, but...
And also, I have my Warren Democrat sticker on the back of my car still.
Mm-hmm.
And there's also a group that I'm in here in the Tulsa area. It's called Tulsa Blue Together, and my car hasn't been messed with. I live in a conservative area of Tulsa, but yeah, it's ridiculous. The rural areas of Oklahoma are just ridiculous right now.
Yeah, and it's not. I mean, I have no problem with large parts of the country being all blue or all red, whatever the case may be. But when that becomes the battle cry or the rallying cry for violence, which it appears it is, and when people, just normal people, start getting characterized as predators, particularly sexual predators, the kind of the bottom of the barrel in our society. It seems to me like an open invitation to violence. It's a terrible thing. David, thank you for the call. Thanks for the heads up on that. Steve in Bridgeport, Vermont. Hey, Steve, what's on your mind today?
Hi, Tom. I got two really quick things. One, I've been tasked with coming up with a fine structure for code violations, and I'm taking into account that I live in a rural area where most people don't make a lot of money, so I'm making the fines very payable.
Right.
And
what do you think about the idea of, the fine is 1/2 of your one-day pay?
I think that's a great idea.
All you have to do is just show your tax return, and we'll divide that by 365, and then we'll divide that by 2, and that's your fine.
I think that's a great idea. I think that would prevent people that have money to say, I don't care about the fine.
Yeah.
Because it'll hit them in their pocket on a daily basis. They'll remember that fine instead of, like you said, paying $3 million for the whole year.
Yeah.
You look at that as the price of doing business, as they used to say.
Yeah, Trump does. Yeah, absolutely. So, Steve, if the article's over at HartmannReport.com. If you want any of the links, to the Chicago Law Review study that said that this is definitely constitutional, or to the historical stuff. If you try that out there in Vermont, let me know, will you? How it gets received?
I will. And Tom, the other thing that I do is I don't have a Biden-Harris sticker on my car or anything. But when I see these Trumpsters with the flags, I point and laugh and ridicule them, and it drives them insane.
Yeah, well,
it gets to it gets them really worked up.
What do you do when somebody pulls a gun on you?
To be honest with you, Tom, I'm more intimidating looking than most of these Trump people. So, and I drive a pickup.
Yeah.
And I drive a pickup, so they think I'm one of them.
There you go.
But until I start laughing at them.
Yeah.
My best was a guy in a Trump train who had a Corvette and had a Trump flag. And I started motioning that he was part of that special gun club that needs bigger guns.
Oh, the small penis gun club, yeah.
Yeah. And I was in my wife's car, which is faster than a Corvette, and this guy tried to chase me. It was very funny.
Oh, man. Okay, Steve, stories from the battlefield. I appreciate the call, and let me know how the fine thing works out. It's great to hear from you. Russell in Hendersonville, North Carolina. Hey, Russell, you're on the air. What's up?
Hi, Tom. Yeah, I read an article recently that I thought was interesting. They said the median IQ in America is 100. That means, half above, half below.
All right.
And then they also stated that 85 was considered a moron, which I thought was kind of a weird term. But anyway, the hallmark of the 100 and below is that they're not able to think sequentially very well. They don't see, this causes that, causes that, causes that. And it made me understand that maybe this is what we've got going here. Half of our country is on the, slogan, freedom, and not really understanding what freedom means. They just say freedom, and
yeah. I think there is probably an element of that, Russell. Remember Donald Trump said we love the uneducated?
Exactly. And so I'm in Hendersonville, which is a very red area, and I called you before about this, but I've got all sorts of bumper stickers. And my newest one that I made up is ignorance trumps stupid, and I use apostrophe on the trumps. So it's, ignorance Trump is stupid, and then the other one is a patriot trumps a traitor with the same apostrophe.
Wow.
And I actually had a guy come up to me, and he was all angry about it and everything, and he didn't get the apostrophe part of it. We argued, and he didn't even get, it's like, no, that means he's stupid. And if you follow him, that means you're not very smart as well. you have to fight these people. I mean, I hate to say it, but you have to get in their face, and that's the problem with a lot of liberal people. Well, some people can't, but I'm a big guy, so I can, and that's the only way we can do it is to tell them, you're wrong. You're wrong. Don't let them believe that what they think is what everyone thinks.
Yeah. Okay. Good story, Russell. Thank you very much for that. Good. Thank you. John in San Francisco. Hey, John. What's on your mind today?
Hi, Tom. Yeah, hi. When you brought up the speeding tickets and the most expensive, I immediately thought of the Nokia CEO back in the 90s who got a speeding ticket. And so I typed that in, and BBC came up with the most expensive speeding ticket ever, which was a $116,000 euro fine for Anzi Van Joki, the Nokia director. Mm-hmm. And he got it for doing 75 and a 50 on his Harley. It looked like a Road King in the photograph. Mm-hmm. Anyway, one of his directors got a $35,000 fine, and then another got an $80,000 fine, an internet millionaire in Finland. But in Finland, they base it, according to this article, they base it on 14 days of his income, and they found it was $14 million, so they fined him 14 million euros. And that's what they base the income on.
Yeah,
apparently.
They call them day fines, and some of the fines are a fraction of a day. Some of the fines are multiple days. It can go up to 120 days at least in Finland, and depending on the severity of the offense.
And when I was living in Denmark, my uncle had his license taken away. He was one of the richest men in Denmark. He had to park his Mercedes for a year and ride a bicycle to work every day. And he was the head of several large businesses in Denmark.
Wow. So they're not messing around in Scandinavia.
No.
Amazing story.
And there was also a guy in Norway who got his license taken away forever for his first DUI.
Whoa. Yeah, no, I know. In Norway, I know about that. Louise and I were in Norway 30 years ago. We picked up a hitchhiker, and he had lost his driver's license for a year for driving under the influence. And I understand that it's gotten more severe since then. John, thank you for the call. We'll be right back.
You're listening to Thom Hartmann. Visit ThomHartmann.com for audio and video archives.
This guy in Norway, he was a kid. He was 18, 19 years old hitchhiking, and he said that he had one drink, one beer, and they busted him. We'll be right back. And welcome back. Bill in Sun City, Arizona. Hey, Bill, what's on your mind today?
Hi, Tom.
Hey.
I had to have my bumper sticker made because I couldn't buy it. It says, if you believe things that aren't true, you're delusional or Republican.
Ha! Okay, that's a good one.
The only remark I've ever gotten to it was the lady. She said, I'm a Republican, and that's funny.
Interesting.
Other than that, nobody says nothing to me.
Yeah.
I'm not intimidating looking at all, Tom. I'm just a little tiny guy.
Yeah. Well, good on you, Bill.
The gentleman that said that they don't have the courage of their convictions, they don't speak out unless they're in a large group, is absolutely right. They don't. They're a bunch of cowards, and we're going to beat them into the ground.
Well,
Take good care, my
politically
friend.
speaking, not physically.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you, Bill.
Take good care.
Thank you. Good to hear from you. Maverick in Edmonds, Washington. Hey, Maverick, thanks for listening to KBCS. What's up?
Good morning, Tom. Good morning, everybody. So, real quick, I want to talk about stickers if you're not too tired of the subject.
No, it's a good one.
Before that, I had a revelation as to why Matt Gaetz is so angry all the time. You know why?
About to go to jail for raping an underage girl?
Because he didn't have a girlfriend in high school until he was 30.
Oh, it's possible. It's
all right. Anyway, so I'm working right now, driving my dump truck, and I'm in a quarry outside of Seattle, and it's a very red area. Okay, there's guys around here that are driving the equipment, and they've got maggot hats on and whatnot. And I pulled over to use the outhouse about an hour ago and saw something I'd never seen before. And it was a picture of Trump, a little one, and him pointing. And it said, "I did this." And it was positioned right next to the toilet in the outhouse.
Oh, really?
First time I've seen one.
Oh, that's a good one.
And I know there's those. I know the Biden stickers are, "I did this" all over the.
Yeah, they're all over the country now. It's become a thing. It's among the Trump humpers.
But this is the first one I saw like that. I was like, okay. So anyway, a little balance to the equation.
There you go. Okay, thank you, Maverick. Great to hear from you. Ziggy in Oneonta, New York. Hey, Ziggy, what's up?
Hey, Tom. Lately, I've been doing a little bit of marketing research. Hello?
Yeah, I'm listening.
Oh, okay. I heard a beep. I thought maybe I lost you. Sorry, excuse me. I have been doing some marketing research and trying to figure out why there are so many Trump and Republican items out there compared to Democratic. Mm-hmm. And I have a number of reasons why, but the number one I have is fear. People are afraid to put anything out there. Mm-hmm. And what I've been also noticing is people come up to me all the time and compliment me on my stickers and my hat and different things that I'm doing, and they're very happy with it. And the first question they tend to ask me is, aren't you afraid of getting beat up?
Yeah. Yeah, I think everybody, I think Democrats all across the country are thinking these people are violent. These people, they hang on to their guns and they use violent language. And it's like, do you really want, it's got to be like the way people felt in Germany in 1932. Ziggy, thanks a lot for the call. Keep up the great work. We'll be right back. Share the Thom Hartmann Program with your friends. We're available on SiriusXM, Free Speech TV, Pacifica, commercial stations nationwide, YouTube, Twitter, Facebook, on the Thom Hartmann app, and you can even tell your smart speaker to listen to the Thom Hartmann Program. So did you hear the story about the three white guys, 20, 22, 24 years old, who just pleaded guilty to trying to attack power grids in 3 different parts of the United States? According to the Justice Department, their scheme was that they were going to bring down electricity for 3 basically major cities or major regions of the United States. And the theory of this program is sort of like what Tim McVeigh was all about back in 1990, I think it was 3, when he blew up the federal building. Their scheme was that doing so, cutting off the power to these cities. Well, this is from the Department of Justice. Quote, the defendants believed their plan would cost the government millions of dollars and cause unrest for Americans in the region. They had conversations about how the possibility of the power being out for months would cause a race war and induce the next Great Depression. They had suicide pills and everything. Why aren't we talking about white terrorism in America? There's a video about this over at ThomHartmann.com. Check it out. And welcome back. 51 minutes past the hour. Fred in Altamont Springs, Florida. Hey, Fred, what's up?
Greetings, Tom.
Back at you.
Yes, I have a. Okay. Yes, I'm going over. I was talking about the signs, and I've had my signs up from Obama, Hillary, and then Biden. And what happened the last time around, I kept getting my Biden signs taken. What I did was, I don't like the Trumpers that take them, but I don't want to hurt them. So what I used, I'm a retired mechanic. We have this thing called anti-seize grease. It's like you can buy it at almost any parts store, and you put it on different various things. And like I like to use it on the end of spark plugs. You put it in there so the spark plugs don't get stuck in there, cylinder heads when you're trying to replace them.
So it's like a really persistent grease.
Correct. And you get that stuff on your hands. It doesn't hurt you, but it doesn't want to come off, doesn't want to wash off. People put it and they wipe their on their pants, and it makes a mess in their pants or on their shirts or on the paper towel, whatever. It's
Fred, you have the heart of a vandal. So you just put the anti-seize grease on the on the sign's bottom post on the where somebody would grab it.
If you have, as I said, when you take a sign like the signs, you grab them underneath there, okay, and you pull them up, and that's why I put a bead right on that, and it doesn't wash off real easy too. Right. So in other words, if you have it out there in the rain, it'll stay on there.
Did they stop stealing your signs as a result of this?
Well, I had numerous signs because I had all the other people that were running for office, all the other Democrats here. They didn't touch them. They got to buy one. The second one, though, I actually tied up in my tree. And so it was a little harder for me to get that one. But then I had one of my ex-coworkers threaten to come out and shoot it because he's a trumpster. And I said, well, that's typical trumpster. They want to come shooting people. And I live in the city, so it's not like we're out in the rural area.
Yeah.
But anyway, as I said, the trumpsters, they put razor blades on the bottom of theirs so people try to grab them. So be careful if you ever drive, get a Trump sign. Be careful you don't get cut yourself.
Jeez.
But I put up thousands of signs.
Yeah.
So.
Amazing. Well, Fred, thank you.
Yeah.
I think. Thank you very much. I appreciate that. Rachel in Chicago. Hey, Rachel, what's up?
Yes. Good afternoon, sir. Great to always listen to you in my car every day that I can. But I just wanted to briefly comment the stupid stickers that these Republicans have been sticking on gas stations.
Mm-hmm.
Every time I go to gas, if I see those stickers, I take them off.
Mm-hmm.
It's childish. It's destroying, not necessarily destroying, but just defacing somebody else's property.
Yeah.
So it's just stupid. But then another thing I want to just briefly address is that who is it? The Washington Post writer Charles Blow about re-migration. I think that's a way that we can take back some of these red states. And it's not just, I know his book, I think, was about African Americans moving back to the South. But I'm just saying, just overall, our young people, they're graduating college or what have you. We're living in, I've been in Chicago most of my life, but I'm not afraid to move to North Dakota, South Dakota.
Yeah.
We need to come out of these big metropolitan cities, L.A., New York.
Well, and it's a lot cheaper to live in some of these red states, too. So.
Absolutely. There's so many benefits. Yeah.
Yeah. So, reoccupy the country. That's a good one. Rachel, thank you.
Yes, thank you, sir.
Okay,
Bye-bye.
Good talking to you. Steve in Bellingham, Washington. Hey, Steve, what's up?
Hello, Tom.
Hey.
Just to weigh in on this whole sticker issue, I actually got my car vandalized many years ago during the Iraq War when I had an anti-war bumper sticker.
Mm-hmm.
So this is nothing new,
Yeah.
Right. So for many, many years, I never put another political sticker on my car until just a few weeks ago. I put a free speech TV sticker on there. Well, I figure most people, most ignorant conservatives who would vandalize a car don't know what free speech TV is,
right.
And they don't know if it's on the right or the left. And hopefully, maybe one of them will check it out.
And it might learn something. Yeah,
exactly.
I think we're pretty good at Free Speech TV. They're a pretty good balance or offset or whatever to Fox so-called news and some of the other stuff that's out there. Steve, good on you.
Yeah.
Thank you very much for the call, and thanks for the story, and thanks for putting the bumper sticker on your car. Wow. Okay. We will continue with Brendan Fischer is going to drop by. Should Democrats demand that Clarence Thomas be impeached? Should his wife be investigated? Should she be prosecuted? This is going to get interesting. Brendan is just an absolute font of wisdom on this regard. Stick around. We'll get to that and your calls.
You're listening to Thom Hartmann.
Take life back!
For our book club today, we're reading Out of the Wreckage, A New Politics for an Age of Crisis by George Monbiot. This is from Chapter 3, Don't Look Back. The political history of the second half of the 20th century could be summarized as the conflict between its two great narratives, neoliberalism and social democracy. Social democracy in this era, whose story I briefly summarized in Chapter 1, acquired much of its power and coherence from the thinking of one remarkable man. Across 4 decades, John Maynard Keynes's work dominated economic thought and practice. During the period the French called the Trente Glorieuses, 1945 to 1975, his prescriptions are widely credited with reviving economies and distributing their benefits. That they remain more or less the only mainstream alternative to neoliberalism today reveals a remarkable stagnation of both thought and ambition. The first and most obvious problem with an attempt to use Keynesian social democracy as a core political narrative is that the story is more than 80 years old. Political stories need to be renewed. If politics does not feel fresh, it struggles to kindle the imaginative excitement from which hope arises. The second problem is that the surviving enthusiasm for Keynes among mainstream parties is highly selective. It has been reduced in most cases to lowering interest rates when economies are sluggish and engaging in tepid counter-cyclical public spending, which means injecting public money into the economy when unemployment is high or recession threatens. Other Keynesian measures, such as raising taxes when an economy grows quickly to dampen the boom-bust cycle, the fixed exchange rate system, capital controls, and a self-balancing global banking system, an international clearing union, all of which Keynes saw as essential complements to these policies, have been discarded and forgotten. Not only does this ensure that the rich old story has been reduced to 2 thin chapters, whose loss of context destroys their narrative power, but the absence of other Keynesian measures, as well as changed global circumstances, weakens the effectiveness of the remaining elements of policy. Let me give you an example. In 2009, in the hope of boosting the economy in the wake of the financial crash, the British government spent £300 million on stimulating sales of new cars. Under its scrappage scheme, if car owners traded in their old vehicles for new ones, the government, with the help of manufacturers, knocked £2,000 off the price. This lavish program was partly justified as an environmental measure, though it was clear from the outset that it would lead to a rise in environmental impacts as the materials and energies used in manufacturing new cars outweigh any likely savings from better fuel economy. Its primary purpose was to boost British car assembly plants and protect the jobs of their workers. But European state aid rules forbade such schemes from discriminating between cars made in Britain and cars made abroad. British car parts assembled only some 15% of the vehicles sold in that country, which meant that 85% of the benefit went to car plants in Germany, Japan, and other manufacturing nations. We could see this spending as foreign aid to some of the world's richest nations. The current pattern of globalization, which developed partly as a result of abandoning the fixed exchange rates and capital controls that Keynes advocated, ensures that this problem is to some extent repeated wherever Keynesian stimulus spending is applied. It might lead to a general, if scarcely detectable, global economic uplift, but the domestic impact will necessarily be weaker than Keynes intended. This issue is compounded by the phenomena of job-free growth, caused in part by the automation now spreading into almost every economic sector. Today, governments pull the starter cord, spending public money and cutting interest rates, that ignited the economy and employment in the past, only to discover that it snaps before the motor fires. 2 feeble measures, removed from the rich framework of thought and narrative in which they were once embedded, have little chance of sustaining a political revival. Another issue is that the troubles that beset the Keynesian model in the 1970s have not disappeared. While the oil embargo of '73 was the immediate trigger for the lethal combination of high inflation and high unemployment, called stagflation back then, that Keynesian policies were almost powerless to counteract. Problems with the system had been mounting for years. Falling productivity and rising costs push inflation, wages and prices pursuing each other upwards, were already beginning to erode support for Keynesian economics. Most importantly, perhaps, the program had buckled in response to the political demands of capital. Strong financial regulations and controls on the movement of money began to weaken in the 1950s as governments started to liberalize financial markets. Richard Nixon's decision in '71 to suspend the convertibility of dollars into gold destroyed the system of fixed exchange rates on which much of the success of Keynes's policies depended. The capital controls introduced to prevent financiers and speculators from sucking money out of balanced Keynesian economies collapsed. Today, it's hard to find a mainstream politician in Europe or the Anglophone nations, including those who call themselves Keynesians, prepared to call for their reintroduction. We cannot hope that the strategies deployed by global finance that helped to destroy the efficacy of Keynes's measures in the 70s will be unlearned. If the soft Keynesianism proposed by opponents of neoliberalism is to amount to anything but tinkering, it has to confront a wider set of challenges than most of its advocates have yet been prepared to acknowledge. But perhaps the biggest problem residual Keynesianism confronts in the 21st century is that when it does work, it collides headfirst with the environmental crisis. The book, Out of the Wreckage by George Monbiot.
This is the Thom Hartmann Program.
Welcome back to the third hour of our program. So, the Ginny Thomas scandal seems to have died down in the media, but we're learning more and more about this on an ongoing basis. And I think this is something that, we need to continue to pay some attention to. I mean, the Supreme Court, these guys have more power than pretty much anybody else in Washington, D.C., when you think about it. The ability to strike down laws or to create laws, basically from whole cloth, as they have done on multiple occasions over the years. Powers, by the way, that you could argue were not given them by the Constitution. So, keeping track of some of this stuff, over at documented.net is Brendan Fischer, our old buddy, the Deputy Executive Director of Documented, a lawyer with expertise in campaign finance and government transparency issues. Brendan, it's been way too long since you've been on the program. Great to have you back with us. Should Democrats demand that Clarence Thomas be impeached? And what do we know about what Ginny Thomas is up to here?
Yeah, well, it's great to be back. Thank you for having me. There's been a lot of attention paid to the text messages that Ginny Thomas sent to then White House Chief of Staff Mark Meadows, urging him to overturn the election. That alone was concerning enough. The fact that the wife of a Supreme Court justice has a direct line to the White House and is advocating for a coup when cases involving the election very well could appear before her husband. But really, it goes deeper than that. It was not just the text messages. Ginny Thomas was, and it apparently is, on the board of CNP Action, a group that actively laid the groundwork for January 6th, actively tried to support the coup. And we just put out a new resource describing Thomas's role in CNP Action, and also for the first time identifying some of the funders that bankrolled the group in 2020.
Now, CNP, this is the Council for National Policy. And I'm fairly well informed on these things, but it wasn't until I read, I'm thinking it was Jane Mayer's book, Dark Money. I may be wrong, but one of these really deep dive tell-alls about the money in the right wingosphere, that I learned that this is really one of the larger and quieter of the and more powerful of the national right-wing groups.
That's right. So Council for National Policy, or CNP, has been around for decades. It's very active starting in the 1980s. It's a network of very influential, very powerful conservative leaders, including executives from groups like the Heritage Foundation, the National Rifle Association, Leonard Leo. Leonard Leo is a member, as well as a number of other, powerful players, some of whom were involved in the planning for January 6th, like Jenny Beth Martin from Tea Party Patriots. But it's been around for a long time. In the 1980s, you can look back at their archives. They would host death squad leaders from countries like El Salvador. They played a big role in the Reagan administration. And although they originally were opposed Trump, they did end up playing a pretty big role in the Trump administration. And Ginny Thomas has been a part of CNP since at least 2012, and she joined the board of CNP Action, the 501c4 arm of CNP, in 2019.
So what do we know about Ginny Thomas and her affiliation with CNP or CNP Action that should cause us concern?
Yeah, so I think there's two layers here. So one is Ginny Thomas is a major player in CNP, and a number of individuals and organizations associated with CNP have interests before her husband, have interests before the court. And that can contribute to questions about conflicts of interest facing Clarence Thomas, Ginny Thomas's husband. And then the other layer is the role that CNP and CNP Action played in supporting Trump's coup, in laying the groundwork for unfounded conspiracy theories about the election being stolen, advocating for state legislatures to reject Biden's win and appoint Trump electors, and advocating for the Senate to only count Trump electors, even from states that Biden won. So, Ginny Thomas's role in CNP, presents some serious concerns for her husband, Clarence Thomas, especially because some of these cases involving challenges to the election of 2020 and January 6th investigation have appeared before him.
You've got kind of the blue collar end of the Republican Party, like the people who showed up on January 6th to trash the Capitol building. And then you've got the super white collar. I always thought, the lawyers and the politicians and the people behind the scenes, the billionaires who are funding these things and pulling the strings. And I'd always thought of the Council on National Policy as being kind of the creme de la creme, the white collar of the white collar in the conservative movement, going back to the 80s. And yet you're telling me that, this bizarre theory that John Eastman came up with, and I actually, wrote an op-ed almost a year before it was in March or April of 2020, saying this is what Trump will probably try to do. And I was basing it on what happened in 1876, the election of 1876. And sure enough, this is what John Eastman, came up with. I doubt he read my article. It wasn't a secret what happened in 1876. But it is still a really, really sketchy legal theory, to say that we can simply, states can submit multiple batches of electors and the vice president can choose which one he wants to honor. And I'm just astonished that the Council for National Policy was behind that. Was this a decision to do this or to endorse this or support this that really was made by the group, or was this just a few people in CNP or CNP Action like Ginny Thomas who were, playing cowboy here with this?
Yeah, it's a great question, and we don't know. We don't know is the short answer. What we do know is early in 2020, in February of 2020, CNP hosted a conference where they had people like Catherine Engelbrecht from True the Vote and Hans von Spakovsky from the Heritage Foundation predicting fraud in the 2020 election well before a single vote had even been cast. And you had the CEO of the American Legislative Exchange Council, or ALEC, raising questions about how state legislators can contest the election results. So the groundwork for advancing baseless claims of fraud and involving state legislators in challenging the election results was certainly being laid at CNP in early 2020. But then immediately after the election, November 11th, just a few days after the 2020 presidential election, CNP Action hosted another panel event, including people like Cleta Mitchell, who at that time appears to have been on Trump's election team, Trump's legal team, to challenge the election results. And there, they discussed reaching out to state legislators and urging them to effectively reject the results of the election. And they doubled down on that theory a few weeks later with a long report backing up Trump's baseless claims of election fraud and claiming that gave state legislators the ability to reject the results of voters and appoint Trump electors instead of the Biden electors who voters had actually selected. So we don't know how much in advance of November 2020 CNP was laying the ground. CNP as an organization was laying the groundwork for the coup theories that were advanced by people like John Eastman. But we certainly know that immediately after the election and the days after the election, CNP and CNP Action were actively advancing these theories, and also, more importantly, were enlisting the support of CNP's powerful members to pressure state lawmakers and to pressure members of Congress to support this coup.
We're talking with Brendan Fischer, the Deputy Executive Director for Documented.net and a lawyer with expertise in campaign finance and government transparency issues. Brendan, kind of last question here. I mean, how unique was CNP among the universe of right-wing, well-known, legitimate conservative organizations, Heritage and Cato and et cetera, et cetera. How unique was CNP in promoting or going along with this coup idea, this Eastman's idea? Were they alone in that, or was this widespread across the right-wingosphere?
Yeah, it's a great question. And CNP was one among many that was supporting Trump's coup and supporting these ideas that state lawmakers and Congress could overturn the results of the election. But I think what was most notable about it is that CNP is such a powerful and largely establishment-aligned institution. Right. This was not one of the fringy Michael Flynn, Patrick Byrne-funded, Mike Lindell crazy nonprofits. CNP is a very well-funded, very powerful, well-established group in Washington, D.C., and the fact that they were getting behind these fringe conspiracy theories, really tells us a lot about where the conservative movement is at right now.
Well, I mean, this was an attempt to overthrow the government of the United States, to overturn an election that 60 different courts had looked at and said, no, everything is solid here. It's almost an embrace of some kind of fascism or something. I mean, I'm frankly surprised that they would do this. Brennan, we just have 15 seconds. Final thoughts?
I invite people to visit our website, Documented.net, and read the resource that we just put out on CNP Action and its efforts around the 2020 election. It includes a list of the funders to the group in 2020, which include people like Leonard Leo, as well as other powerful figures in the conservative movement.
Yeah, it's well worth checking out. Documented.net is the website. Brendan Fischer, the Deputy Executive Director. Brendan, thanks a lot for dropping by.
All right, thanks for having me.
Always great talking with you. We'll be back. Stick around. It's the Thom Hartmann Program. Back with your phone calls right after this.
This is the Thom Hartmann Program.
We'll be right back. It's 18 minutes past the hour. And welcome back. And whoops, get my handy dandy cursor here. And Ed in Belfair, Washington. Hey Ed, what's on your mind today?
Hello, Tom. I wanted to speak about the bumper stickers and signs. I have several. My truck's loaded. Across my back bumper, got 2 Democracy Now! Stickers with wage peace. And the back of my window, I've got Tom on there. I've got free speech. I've got Inslee, Cantwell. And my favorite, too, is "We Must Be the Change We Wish to See in the World" by Gandhi. The day we come silent about the things that matter is the day we lose our voice by Martin Luther King. But with that being said, during the election, I paint my own signs. And I had a 4x8 sign up with Biden-Harris that I painted with a peace sign on it. And my neighbor is a Republican. He voted for Trump. But when my wife walked down to the road, people would drive by and scream and yell and flip her off. And my neighbor was worried about getting shot at. And I said, that just shows you where the Republicans are at. They are so angry and so mad that they can't even talk about the policies. But he's always worried about getting shot at. And I said, well, I got cameras, so we'll see who it is. Yeah. But with that being said, there's just a lot of angry people out there. And I remember a month ago or 2 months ago, you had Katrina on there, Vanderhoeven. And the last statement you asked her was, what do we need to do? And she said, we need to think peace. Yeah. And so I put my big peace sign back up. I cut that off the other end of Biden-Harris, and that's still always up. And I wave and give the peace sign to everybody that flips me off. I think it just makes them more angry. But I don't want to show the anger that they're showing. Yeah. And so with that being said, Tom, I want to thank Louise, your staff, and you again for a great program.
Well, thank you. Thank you, Ed. And thanks for the update. The story of what you're doing. That's amazing. Bill in Teleco Plains, Tennessee. Hey, Bill, what's on your mind today?
How you doing, Tom?
Good.
Hey, Tom, I had an incident with a Trump supporter one time, and it happened to be at my grandkid's birthday party, okay? He brought up the topic of Trump, and I told him how much I really didn't like the man, and, he's starting, Trump's great, Trump's this, Trump's that. I said, well, I said a few things. Originally I'm from the Northeast, and I knew Trump was, an adulterer. He's doing this, he's doing that. And, he said, oh, you're full of crap, blah, blah, blah. I used other words. And then I told him, I said, Donald Trump loves money more than he loves human life. Okay? And it set the man off.
Really?
We were standing by a swing. Yeah, yes, sir. We were standing by a swing set. You know how it's got an A-frame on the sides, and a bar across. He had his hands on top of the bar. So he reached down and grabbed one of the swing set seats, and he smacked me in the side of the face with it.
Really? Wow.
Yes, sir, he did. And
was this a relative or the parent of one of your kids' friends?
My stepdaughter's father-in-law.
Wow. Amazing.
Okay, and
you wonder what provokes this anger, this violence.
I don't know, sir. It started off as a nice conversation, and I got him down on the ground. I hit him twice, but there were many people there to break us up.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
He broke us up. Okay. Now we went our separate ways. He took off first. Okay, but before he left, he threatened to kill me.
Wow.
Okay, sir. He went home because he lived close there. Me and my wife happened to leave. He went home and got a gun.
And came back?
He came back with, yes, sir. He came back waving it. Now, the man did get arrested for assault.
I got to run, Bill. Thanks for the story. Wow, what a story. Missed my opening rant today? It's usually published over at HartmannReport.com, where you can read it and share it with your friends for free. Check it out, HartmannReport.com. Have you noticed that people are basically imitating Donald Trump all over the country? We're seeing all this rude behavior, sexist, racist behavior, people getting arrested at airport gates, airplanes being turned around because people are fighting with flight attendants, disorderly, rude, unhinged conduct. I mean, it's just gone nuts. Car crashes are up, gun deaths are up, shootings are up. Healthcare workers are being literally physically assaulted in some hospitals. They're having to put together panic buttons. This kind of behavior in our schools is increasing. It looks like, according to some sociologists, psychologists, and even business consultants, it looks like a lot of this ties back not just to the Trump presidency, with Donald Trump providing us with an example of how to be, an obnoxious person, but also the crisis of the pandemic. We've got a deeper dive into this topic over at ThomHartmann.com. There's a great video about it. You can check it out there. Well, I got a crazy alert for you here. This is truly bizarre. So they're pushing legislation down in Tennessee to criminalize homelessness. Now, as if that's the solution to homelessness, right? Just make it so that if somebody's camping on public property or even in a private property, but in an open space, that we're going to throw them in jail. I mean, all this is going to do is cost us a lot more for jail. It costs a lot of money to throw people in jail. There's a lot of homeless people. There's a whole range. I mean, we can have debates and discussions about what to do about homelessness, but just throwing them in jail, not the best strategy. But anyhow, they're debating this bill in Tennessee, and that would, punish unauthorized, camping. And State Senator Brenda Gilmore, a Democrat from Nashville, spoke up. And she says, it just breaks my heart that we're criminalizing people who have nowhere else to go. And if you take and incarcerate their parents, and she's talking about homeless kids, then I think that, again, only multiplies the issue of taking their parents away from these children simply because they're poor. So in response to that, we get this other lawmaker who steps up. His name is Frank Nicely. He's from Strawberry Plains, Republican from Strawberry Plains, Tennessee. And he says, I want to give you a little history lesson on homelessness. In 1910, Adolf Hitler decided to live on the streets for a while. Hitler lived on the streets and practiced his oratory and body language and how to connect with the masses, and then he went on to lead a life that got him in the history books. So a lot of these people, it's not a dead end. They can come out of this. These homeless camps, they can come out of them and have a productive life. Just like Hitler. Yes. This is our role model. I'm guessing that this guy just learned this, and he was, somehow, for some reason, marinating in the history of Adolf Hitler's life, and so it just popped out of his. But maybe I don't know. Maybe this guy is like a longtime Hitler aficionado. Maybe everything everybody says, well, I think that's a pretty good dog food. Oh, Hitler loved his dog. Hitler did love his dog. Well, hey, eat your hamburger, Johnny. Hey, Hitler was a vegetarian, don't you? He actually was. I just don't know what this guy's motive was or why he thought that talking about Adolf Hitler was the way to promote legislation and criminalize homeless people. But it seems to have worked. The bill passed the Tennessee legislature. We'll be back. It's 27 minutes past the hour. Pick up your phone calls on the other side of this break. Stick around.
You're listening to the Thom Hartmann Program. Call 202-808-9925.
Exposing the con and conservative. I'll be right back with you.
It's the Thom Hartmann University Book Club. Today we're reading from Minority Leader, How to Lead from the Outside and Make Real Change by Stacey Abrams. This is from chapter 1, although the introduction is fascinating too, where she talks about, Rhodes scholarships and stuff, but this is chapter 1. I sit in the living room, a cozy space, warm in the early summer. I'm perched on the edge of a sofa next to Valerie, the home's owner, a lovely black woman in her late 40s. Across from us, seated close together on a wide settee meant for one, are her 2 children, a son and a daughter. Politicians rarely visit their streets, which are nestled in a poorer community in South Georgia. Valerie beams with pride that both her children are headed to college in the fall. David, 17, plans to study criminology. Maya, 18, her belly round with her first child, intends to become a middle school teacher. Both newly graduated from high school, Maya will give birth in mere weeks and begin college months later, an unwed teen mother. Her intended school is more than 3 hours north of her home, so her mother will raise her newborn baby while she starts her freshman year. Valerie speaks matter-of-factly about the coming challenge, raising a new child just as hers leaves the nest. Still, she is determined that both her children pursue college degrees that she never received. Maya, the mother-to-be, wonders how she'll do so far away from home and her baby. Yet in the next breath, she explains how college will be the best for her and her child. Their future success rests upon her. I've come to their home as part of my campaign for governor, so I asked Valerie what she expects of someone like me. What can I do to help make lives like hers better? In her soft voice, she replies, she just wants options for financial aid for her children. They will succeed, she says, if they can afford to stay in school. As I look around the modest home passed down through the generations, I understand both the pride and the desperation tangled in her response. She got them through and has given them the tools to carve out better lives for themselves. We chat more about the worries she has lived with all those years, our discussion turning to the crime and poverty in their neighborhood. Then I ask Valerie what she wants. At first, all I get in response is a quizzical look to suggest I need to reconsider my bid for higher office. Or that suggests. I repeat, what do you want for you? What secret dream do you have for yourself? Her confused expression turns to one of surprise. I don't know, she tells me. I've been a cashier at the Piggly Wiggly for 20 years. You must want something, I probe, something you'd like to do for you? A daycare, she admits quietly. I'd like to start a daycare center for unwed mothers like my daughter, so more girls can finish school and pursue their dreams. But that ambition is beyond her. Her body language, her tone of voice, her averted gaze speak louder than her words. I press her, but she demurs with a smile. Let's just see what happens if you win the governor's job, she says. Valerie's house in South Georgia is not too different from the squat red brick house where I grew up on South Street in Gulfport, Mississippi. An oak tree grew out in our front yard, shadowing the front sidewalk, forbidding grass to grow beneath its shade. Pink azaleas bloomed each spring from bushes that flanked the front door. Our rented house and the other set close by teemed with children, all black, all working class. We played in our postage-stamped yards, make believing the fantastical, superhero exploits, cops and robbers. As we got older, we'd talk about moving to New Orleans or living in one of the mansions along the beachfront that lay less than 5 miles away, across the railroad tracks that ran in between our neighborhood and the more wealthy environs. We dreamed of more, while our parents' lives centered around survival and making it from paycheck to paycheck. Instinctively, we understood that more had to be possible, even if we didn't know what to do to get there. These imaginings, these desires, are the roots of ambition. As adults, like Valerie, we tend to edit our desires until they fit our construction of who we're supposed to become. In such a world, I wouldn't dare dream of running for higher office, for mayor or governor or president. At least for now, Valerie sees herself retiring in 20 more years from Piggly Wiggly as a cashier, rather than as a small business owner who helps the community raise its children. From our brief meeting, I could see she had the fire, albeit of a low burn, of a minority leader. She had ambition, she had vision, but she didn't have the faith, and understandably so. Whether we come from working class neighborhoods or grow up comfortably middle class, minorities rarely come of age explicitly thinking about what we want and how to get it. People already in power almost never have to think about whether they belong in the room, much less if they would be listened to once outside. These men, and they are usually men and typically white, do not have to grapple with low expectations based on gender or race or class. Ambition for them begins with reminiscences of old times and older friendships or newer alliances. The ends have already been decided. Only the means are to be discussed. Most potential minority leaders feel the same lack of faith Valerie had, at least at some point in their evolution. We may not know how to get the first job, let alone make it to the big chair. We don't know how to take the leap from accepting our fates to actually changing them, and not just a little, but radically. Then there are those who simply don't know what they want. The drive to achieve burns inside, often without a clear target. We want to be something, but what that is remains hazy. Often we cannot articulate our goals because they lie just beyond the reach of who we're supposed to be. Ambition's scale is irrelevant. What holds us back is not scope, it's fear. And because we don't know what to call our dreams, don't know how to make them happen, or are pretty sure we'll be disappointed. We just stand still. We become a minority. But becoming a minority leader demands that we embrace ambition as our due. Stacey Abrams.
Our 1 hour free podcast recaps our show, and it's available wherever fine podcasts are found. And we have the full 3 hour podcast available over at thomhartmann.com if you want to really support our program. You can now hear The Hartmann Report, our free daily 1 hour podcast. The Hartmann Report covers the highlights of our program every day, and you can listen anywhere, anytime. It's news, opinion, and debate. The Hartmann Report is available wherever fine podcasts are distributed. Plus, the Thom Hartmann Program has a daily newsletter. Every day, Sue puts together the daily stack with links to the topics that I cover every day. Newsletter has special announcements and my daily take. You'll also get links to our important vids. It's free, it's easy. More information at thomhartmann.com. I've been watching the war coverage basically on TV, and it strikes me that it's beginning to look a lot like sports. They're moving into this region over here, and they'll have this weaponry, and maybe they'll be able to defeat that group, but what about this group over here? And it's like, I'm not sure if this is a good thing or a bad thing. I get it that sports is like a stand-in for war for in the human instinct category. But by treating this war in Ukraine as sports, are we stripping it of its outrage? Or not? I just don't know. I just thought I'd toss that out to discuss. By the way, around this time yesterday, somebody called. Actually, it was right before the show ended. Somebody called and said, "Is Merrick Garland in the Federalist Society?" And I Googled it while we were talking on the air, and there was a bio for Merrick Garland on the Federalist website, and the Federalist Society website. And so I said, "Yes, absolutely." I was wrong. As far as I can tell, he's not a member of the Federalist Society. He's a quote contributor to the Federalist Society, which means that they have published stuff that he's written. So I just, wanted to keep the record straight here. Let's pick up your phone calls. And Glenn in Olivet, Michigan. Hey, Glenn, what's on your mind today?
Hey, Tom, I wanted to elaborate just a little bit more on that previous caller about the never sees on the signs.
Okay.
The
never sees grease. Yeah, somebody tweeted a picture of a can of that just a little bit ago.
Yeah. Well, what a lot of your viewers might not know is it actually has a graphite base to it.
Mm-hmm.
So once they grab that sign, throw it in the back of their pickup, it's going to get on their steering wheel. If they wipe their face, it's going to get on their face. And like he said, it does not wash off. It has to wear off.
Wow.
And now for the people that want to do this to their signs, don't put any on the very corners of your sign. That way, when you're mowing your lawn, you can gently pick it up and take your palms of your hand and push it back in.
Right.
We've done this for years.
Really? This is the anti-sign theft or anti-sign vandalism strategy is to use never sees grease. Go ahead.
Yeah. Like I say, it's a graphite base. It doesn't wash off. It used to be an old trick. People used on job sites. They'd put it in hard hats and welding hoods on their forehead, and then they'd wear a silver band for about a week.
Right, until it wears off. That's amazing.
Yeah.
Well, Glenn, thanks for the further information. I appreciate it. Arthur in Dady, Florida. Hey, Arthur, what's up?
Yes, my name's Arthur, and I'm a proud and professional retired air traffic controller.
Hey, good on you. I always love the bumper sticker that says air traffic controllers tell pilots where to go. Being a pilot.
Yeah, either that or air traffic controllers never have a nice day.
There you go.
But anyway, I want to talk about Senator Rick Scott and his proposed legislation to put Medicare and Social Security and Medicaid on a plan to have them voted on every 5 years.
Right.
This is a guy that stole millions of dollars from the Hospital Corporation of America regarding Medicare fraud, and he is the worst senator and the worst governor that Florida has ever experienced.
Wow.
And I'll tell you what, I think the any Republican that supports this legislation is going to be putting themselves in a very serious danger of not being reelected, because these programs are not only very popular amongst Democrats, they're very popular amongst Republicans and the population at large. Yeah,
the Republicans love their socialism when it's Medicare and Social Security and they're over 65, but otherwise they're just like hating on it. Do you, and I agree with you, Arthur, and so does Mitch McConnell. Mitch McConnell has asked Rick Scott to keep it down. Don't talk about this so much, because this is going to, if people knew that this is what Republicans are really up to, which is raising taxes on 100 million Americans, the bottom half of America, and killing Social Security, Medicare, and Medicaid, they won't vote for us. It'll be a problem for us, says Mitch McTurtle. Are you finding that any of your other Republican legislators down there in Florida are backing up Rick Scott, or are they running from him?
I really don't know. I'm not too friendly with many Republican legislators.
Yeah, so you're not seeing anything in the news about him.
I'm a solid Democrat all my life, and I support Democrats to the end of the earth. Yeah, there you go. Well, it's going to be interesting to see how many Republicans sign up for this. This is this cycle's version of Mitt Romney's 47% comments, and I think it's going to bite them in the butt, like you said. We'll see. Arthur, thank you for the call, and thanks for the info from Florida. Sarah in Fort Worth, Texas. Hey, Sarah, what's on your mind today?
Hey, I want to chime in on the insane violence these Trump supporters do. We were at our, little watering hole after work, and we literally just got there. I went over to play some music, and they were speaking, and all I said, I didn't even address him. I said, he's an idiot. And this guy turns around, backs me up into a corner, and says, I won't make it home because, he's got a gun, and he's going to the point where the bartenders they called the police to escort us to our car.
Whoa. Just because you said Trump was an idiot?
Yep.
Wow. So what's the lesson you take from that, Sarah?
I'm not sure. I mean, do I keep my mouth shut, or do I tell him how I'm feeling, or how my ideas on the subject, and then run the possibility of being, and I will tell you that it's made me very wary about anything, because we've made no doubt we are supporters of progressive and so it makes me worry about our neighbors if this thing gets any higher, that they're going to come and plus I've got the whole abortion thing to deal with too, because it's nuts here in Texas. It truly is nuts.
Yeah, this is when a political party doesn't have anything to really offer people other than hate. It has passed through a doorway of some kind. It's that has closed behind it, and we saw this. I mean, none of us alive saw it, but the world saw this in 1932 in Germany, in 1928 in Italy,
exactly.
Right up until the 1970s in Spain, and it's very, very hard to recover for a political party or their followers to recover from having embraced the hate that becomes open fascism, the threat of physical violence as a way of accomplishing political ends. And it's truly tragic. It truly is. Sarah, thank you for sharing that story. Thank you. I appreciate hearing from you. Greg in Athens, Georgia. Hey, Greg, what's up?
Hey, Tom, how you doing, man?
I'm well. What's on your mind?
I wanted to make a comment on the homeless in Tennessee. I'm a truck driver, and I run a lot of Tennessee. I don't think they got enough jails for all the homeless people, Tom.
Yeah, that was my point. It seems like a crazy strategy, I mean,
I can tell you where a spot at right now in Chattanooga, for probably one block will fill up every jail they got.
Really? It's that bad?
Oh, it's bad, man. It's terrible.
Yeah. It's happening all over the country.
Camp there, man.
I
think it's probably. Oh, excuse me. Go ahead.
Well, I was just wondering how it was in Georgia, since you live in Athens, Georgia.
Well, Athens is not as bad as Chattanooga.
Yeah.
I mean, we have a homeless problem too, but it's not that bad. Not as bad as Tennessee.
Yeah, it's pretty rough here in Portland. We need a national approach to this. This is this is what you get when you have just absolutely massive inequality and people just homeless. I mean, it's just a terrible thing. Greg, thanks for the call, and thanks for the insights into Chattanooga. Maybe that's why the guy went off on his Hitler rant, because he basically had nothing else. It's like, when you ain't got nothing, then you turn to Adolf Hitler, I guess. It's 44 minutes past the hour. Back with your phone calls on the other side of this break. We'll be right back.
You're listening to Thom Hartmann. Visit thomhartmann.com for audio and video archives.
Democrats bring jobs, Republicans bring mobs. There's a bumper sticker for you. We'll be right back. And welcome back. Bob in Desert Hot Springs, California. Hey, Bob, thanks for watching us on Free Speech TV. What's on your mind today?
Hey, you're welcome, Tom. Two observations on Trump voters. One is, obviously, they're afraid of change. And the other one is they believe what they hear, not what they investigate. And the other thing I want to say is the best bumper sticker I ever saw was one that Free Speech was offering when Trump was president. Elect a clown, expect a circus.
Oh yeah, I remember that. And in fact, that was a premium on our fundraisers there for a while. Yeah, that was
the best. And another observation, Tom, if I can ask you.
Yeah, sure, go for it.
Okay, thank you. Do you think that Trump would have been able to try to pull off what he did if we would have had a popular vote system as opposed to an electoral system? More reason to go for
No, because the whole key to his strategy was to manipulate the electoral vote. He knew that he had lost by 7 million votes. He lost by 3 million votes the first time. And, and this kind of amplifies why we really need to have a popular vote. The president should be elected by the people.
Right. That's one more reason to push for the popular vote.
Yeah. Yeah, nationalpopularvote.com, I think, is the website, but
yes.
Yeah, and we need to get more states involved in this. So, yeah, it's a good one.
You're right,
Bob, thanks a lot for the call. Good to hear from you. Nelson in Oceano, California. Am I saying it right, Nelson?
Yes, you are.
Hey, what's up?
Thanks for. Just why no outrage over Yemen and the fact that we support a country who is similarly atrocious to Russia and is slaughtering those people.
My guess is the reason why, Nelson, is actually there's probably a couple of levels of it. But first of all, Trump actually supported that, and he was president when it started, and the media just kind of went along with it and said, okay, this is U.S. policy to support this. And then secondly, it's brown people killing brown people in another part of the world.
Exactly. But there doesn't seem to be the same outrage.
Exactly.
I guess that's guided by the media to a certain extent. I saw a documentary during the Trump campaign regarding his campaign from Al Jazeera. Mm-hmm. Al Jazeera English, I believe. They have a couple of different divisions. But they explained exactly how he patterned his campaign after how he runs the Celebrity Apprentice. It doesn't have to be true. It doesn't have to be right. It just has to be loud.
Right, and flashy, and it has to have a hook, and you have to have suspense. And I mean, you're absolutely right. General Electric spent, or NBC, I guess. Well, I think GE owned NBC back then. They spent millions training him on how to do it. I mean, he went through class. They hired tutors for Donald Trump to teach him how to be a reality TV star.
And that's how he's being.
Just like with Ronnie Reagan.
Yeah, exactly. But he's galvanized his mob, and that hasn't changed. And so I wonder if the approach to pointing these things out is doing anything except making them a more solid unit where Democrats are fractionalized and aren't likely to pull together enough to beat them.
I think Trump, as increasingly people learn, the horrors, that he tried to overturn our government. As that becomes more conventional wisdom, I think you're going to see Trump just vanish. Thank you very much for the call, by the way. We'll be right back. Hey, I've got a new book out. It's called The Hidden History of Big Brother in America, How the Death of Privacy and the Rise of Surveillance Threaten Us and Our Democracy. Available wherever you find fine books. So if you want to know what the Republicans are for, you'll recall, President Biden recently in his one-year anniversary of becoming president speech said that, who would have imagined that all they were in favor of doing was just obstructing anything I'm doing. And then he went on to say, what are the Republicans for? What does Mitch McConnell stand for? Chris Sununu, the governor of New Hampshire, actually went and talked to the number of Republican senators when he was thinking about running for the Senate, asked them, what are you guys doing? And they said, we're just here basically obstructing Biden. That's all we're doing. And Sununu said, screw that. I'm not going to run for the Senate then. He said they were all, for the most part, content with the speed at which they weren't doing anything. It bothered me that they were okay with that. So then, Mitch McConnell got asked by an NBC, Leanne Caldwell at NBC, what are you guys going to do if you get elected? And McConnell said, I'll tell you after the election. This is nuts. We got a video about it over at ThomHartmann.com. Check it out. And welcome back. Picking up your phone calls. Cheryl in Clarksville, Georgia. Hey, Cheryl, what's on your mind today?
Oh, this is a very interesting topic, Tom. It's nice to talk with you. I love your show. I live in Andrew Clyde's district. Unfortunately, I used to live in Atlanta, but my husband wanted me to move up here. It's where he grew up, and then he died. So I'm a widow. I have been attacked by my neighbors in 2018, I believe it was, and I don't even have signs. I'm not on social media. I'm not even on the internet right now. When my computer was stolen, I didn't replace it, so I'm off the grid. So I don't even know what happened, but one neighbor, actually two, stalked me, and my neighbor on the other side sicked their dogs on me. All I can surmise is that I have a lot of misdirected mail. That never happened when I lived in Atlanta, but this was when Stacey Abrams was running, and I was getting a lot of flyers about her, and I also get mail like from Planned Parenthood. So I don't know what happened, but I also found out that I live right in the middle of Aryan nations.
Oh my.
So this is a very scary place to live, and I've thought about moving, but I don't really know where to go. It's kind of a scary place to be.
And Andrew Clyde, your state or your U.S. representative, your member of Congress, is the guy who made sure that post office was not named in Florida. In fact, this has nothing to do with Georgia.
And I hear that the guy who sponsored that they ask him what happened, and he says, I really don't know.
Yeah,
he doesn't know. He was whipped against his own bill by this guy. Andrew Clyde. I knew Andrew Clyde would win because his campaign signs had an automatic weapon on them. It just had his name and a picture of a gun. Andrew Clyde is a gun store owner.
And
so he owns at least 2 gun stores, and he loved Donald Trump because Donald Trump got him out of trouble with the IRS. He had assets forfeiture, seizure, whatever you call it. I don't know the details, but Donald Trump helped get him out of trouble when he was in power with the IRS. So something like that, I don't understand. And also, you talked about John Birch Society yesterday, I believe, and turns out that is all in power in this county now. A couple of years ago, there was a very elaborate flyer or pamphlet put in our local paper and endorsed by our sheriff, and many of our local businesses, including a bank, several restaurants, insurance companies.
This was all promoting the JBS, the John Birch Society?
Yes, and it's called Support Your Local Police Committee, and they're very much against Homeland Security, which I'm like you. I don't like the name of the Homeland. I don't like that terminology, but they want you to support the local police instead of Homeland Security, which made me think of your Sheriff Mack.
Yeah.
But it even has Asian restaurant and Mexican restaurant, and a restaurant that I know is owned by gay men. So I don't understand if they know what this. Because my dad was also a person. You talk about your dad, although my dad was actually one of the ones that your dad warned you against. He was George Wallace,
one of the John Birch Society guys. Yeah. I get it. Sure.
So this is and this was in my local paper, and as I said, endorsed by our sheriff, who I don't know if you guys remember, Baby Boo Boo. My sheriff is the one who sponsored the flashbang grenade that blew off the face of Baby Boo Boo.
Oh, my.
And so this is where I live. And also, turns out, I think I told you, I have Aryan nations here.
Yeah, you did.
Found out
you did. Cheryl, absolutely amazing story. Thanks for sharing it with us there from Georgia. Mark in Ann Arbor, Michigan. Hey, Mark, what's on your mind?
Hi, Tom. Just calling to tell you about the best Trump bumper sticker I've ever seen, anti-Trump bumper sticker.
Okay.
I was in a red area in Michigan, and I pulled up behind a huge pickup truck. And it had a picture of Trump, so I thought, typical Trumper here. The picture was Trump picking his nose, and over to the left of that, or to the right of that, in big letters, it said, "Does this ass make my truck look big?" And I thought it was the most creative bumper sticker I'd ever seen. So it's not only Trumpers that drive big trucks in Michigan.
Yeah, okay. Well, Mark, you win the prize. Thank you very much. That was a good one.
Thank you, Tom.
That's a great one. Miguel in Frederick, Maryland. Hey, Miguel, what's up?
Hey, so what I was going to say about that bill in Tennessee, which I really don't, I don't go to Tennessee, but it's history repeating itself. They passed a bunch of laws after when you talk about 1876 and all the rest, that stopped blacks from going north.
Right.
Any black that was seen on the highway and the road, they could be arrested, put in jail, they'll put their trial date off, and in the meantime, they were leased out to local farmers.
Yeah, the sundown laws were all about that, if you're familiar with that.
Yeah, so they're just doing it again. So when they do this, they're not going to mess with the homeless white guy because he's a good guy. But the homeless black veteran, he's a criminal.
Yeah.
So we're going to arrest him or maybe even shoot him. Yeah. So my point is that people laugh at this stuff, but they're just going back to the same damn book.
Yeah.
Thank you. And I love your show.
Yeah.
Bye-bye.
Okay. Thanks a lot, Miguel. Mary in Seattle. Hey, Mary, what's up?
Hi, Tom. I like what you're saying about the Republicans are all about messing up Biden, shaming him, keeping him from doing anything. And I still believe this high prices in the oil, the foods, and everything is a Republican effort to make everybody mad at the Democrats.
I agree. Corporate profits are higher than they've ever been, Mary.
Oil companies, stores are owned by Republicans.
I'm with you.
And they give money to them.
I'm with you. Mary, I got to run, but thank you. Yeah, spot on. I couldn't endorse what you say more strongly. I think, frankly, I don't know if it's a conspiracy, but it's weird. The highest corporate profits in history, and everybody's jacking their prices up. There's something going on. We'll be back tomorrow, same time, same place. Thanks so much for being with us today. In the meantime, don't forget, democracy is not a spectator sport. It requires you. So get out there, get active, tag you're it, and have a great afternoon. We'll see you tomorrow. Anything Goes Friday up tomorrow.
You've been listening to Thom Hartmann. For audio and video archives, visit thomhartmann.com.
These companies support the Thom Hartmann Program. They are HelloFresh, the #1 meal kit delivery service. More info at HelloFresh.com, code TOM. The Hidden History of Big Brother in America, How the Death of Privacy and the Rise of Surveillance Threaten Us and Our Democracy by Thom Hartmann. More information at all book outlets. Wild Alaskan Company, 100% sustainable wild-caught seafood delivered right to your door. More info at wildalaskancompany.com/Tom. Cozy Earth, better sleep, better you. More info at CozyEarth.com, promo code TOM. The latest views and opinions from U.S. politics and other fascinating subjects, too, including cutting-edge science reports at HartmannReport.com. And Dinovite, a whole food supplement for your pet's immune system. More info at Dinovite.com.
We say fight back!